At Helmuth Castle, Vermouth and his 4 partners, Senia the Wise, Anise the Faithful, Molin the Brave, and Hamel, the Fool, who is our protagonist, were trying to defeat another demon king. So far, they had managed to defeat 3 out of the 5. However, when they attempted to defeat the 4th demon king, Hamel, who considered Vermouth his rival, ended up sacrificing himself to save his partner's life, who would have fallen into a trap. With his last strength, Hamel bids farewell to his companions and asks the hero Vermouth to kill the remaining 2 demon kings, a request that Vermouth fulfills. With no time left, he declares his love for Senia and dies. But it wasn't quite like that, as 300 years after his companions tried to kill the last 2 remaining demon kings, he reincarnates as Eugene Lionhart, one of the descendants of hero Vermouth. Eugene was one of several descendants of Vermouth and came from a collateral lineage, which was forbidden from training with real swords and kamana. However, this didn't stop his overwhelming talent with fencing from progressing. While he trained, his father was constantly awed by his physical abilities, which seemed extraordinary for a 13-year-old boy. Eugene sought a good physique for the lineage ceremony, a Lionhart family tradition where all children aged 10 to 15 gather for a battle to earn the honor of being called Lionhart. However, the disadvantage of the collateral lineage compared to the direct one was that they were permitted to use a real sword and mana, while his father felt inferior for having such a talented son. He tried to persuade his son to give up the lineage ceremony, saying he wouldn't be able to win the direct lineage. But our protagonist only thought about defeating all his relatives at the lineage ceremony. As he traveled to the ceremony location, he remembered his past life. Hamel, who had a gift for learning difficult things very easily, found himself overshadowed by his friend's talents. While he thought about this, he wondered, why was the demon king still alive, sporting a very furious look? The butler, noticing this, begins to talk to him about life in the main house. Upon arriving at the Lionhart's main house, Eugene was guided to his accommodation, where he was introduced to his temporary maid, Nina. Eugene asks her age, to which she responds that she is 16 years old. He thinks that the Lionharts gave him an inexperienced maid to provoke him, in case he rebels against her. Eugene learns through Nina that the other relatives would take 4 days to arrive. He asks her to show him where the training area is, and while Eugene trains, his cousins, who knew he had arrived, wanted to give him a little scare. Arriving at the training ground, Eugene begins warming up, which astonishes his maid, as he is incredibly fast with weighted bags on his body. Kian becomes curious and asks what the bumpkin was doing when Eugene calls him an idiot for not realizing he was training. Kian orders him to clean the carriage, saying that it's something a bumpkin would do. Kian gets angry since Eugene didn't obey his order. Thus, he asks the protagonist to duel him, so the prota, who didn't want trouble, just asks him to leave, but the extra insists, saying he was afraid. This ends up messing with Eugene's psyche. Kian continues to babble, saying that Eugene's parents didn't teach him honor, at which point the protagonist becomes furious and starts humiliating him. Since Kian, as soon as he dropped the handkerchief, had already lost, Chao is amazed and can't believe her brother lost without landing a single blow on Eugene and accuses him of cheating, saying he used mana. When he explains to her that he didn't cheat at all, the brother's butler arrives. After Eugene explains the reason for the duel, the 2 brothers leave, whereas Eugene, on the other hand, eagerly awaits the day of the lineage ceremony to humiliate the descendants of his rival, Vermouth. After hearing Heezer's report, Anna Celia, the second wife of the direct lineage, is dismayed by her son's defeat to a member of the collateral lineage. She interrogates her daughter, Chao, to gather more information about Eugene. Anna Celia understands the situation and asks her daughter to keep an eye on the boy, an order that her daughter complies with, as she herself has shown some interest in Eugene. The next day, 3 more members of the collateral lineage arrive for the ceremony. While Eugene trains, Lilia informs our protagonist that the patriarch is arriving. With no time to change clothes, he greets him in his training uniform. Eugene can see for the first time all the members of the direct lineage, such as the patriarch who arrives at his house greeting his heir, who in turn demonstrates extreme insecurity when addressing his father. After greeting all his relatives, he gathers all the children for the banquet so they can get an idea of what the lineage ceremony will be like. At the banquet, Garjan and Desaria arrive. They are the last 2 members of the collateral lineage missing. Besides them, a special guest accompanies the banquet. When Chao asks her father who the guest would be, everyone in the room is surprised to discover that the man's identity is Loberian, the master of the Red Tower of Magic. Eugene is shocked to find this out, as he is somehow connected to Senia, his old friend who was considered the youngest mage to become a master of the tower. In a way, His scene of astonishment catches the patriarch's attention because he knew about the duel against his son. He recognizes Eugene's strength and is disappointed that his son had not yet apologized to the protagonist. Seeing that Kian didn't apologize properly, the protagonist gets furious but doesn't pay attention to it. The patriarch becomes interested in the boy's ability, as he won the fight with just one blow and without using mana. When he asks Eugene if he learned to fight from his father, he and the rest of his relatives are amazed to find out that the boy had only learned the basics from his father, and during the rest of his life, he learned everything on his own. The patriarch is impressed and shortly after that orders the food to be served. After dinner, they finally find out how the lineage ceremony would be revealed. The master of the Red Tower had prepared a maze full of monsters. To pass the test, they must defeat the maze's boss. The maze was actually just an illusion created by the master of the tower. They wouldn't come out totally hurt from this test. After the explanation, Eugene asks what the winner would gain. After discovering that he could choose any treasure from the family, Eugene becomes even more excited. After the meeting, our protagonist is surprised by Garjan and Desaria, who want to know if he really won against Kian. After saying that he won, the protagonist leaves without explanation. While training, he is once again surprised by his cousins, but this time Garjan takes the lead. He starts showing off his muscles and asks Eugene if he also wants to take steroids to get as pumped as he is. The protagonist just ignores this lunatic. Desaria, on the other hand, wants to know why he uses a sword, since he won against Kian with a spear. Eugene explains that he can use all weapons. Desaria doesn't believe this and asks him to fight her. Convinced that he was only bluffing and insulting the art of the spear, Garjan would be the judge and the fight begins. The girl can't believe that Eugene's posture had no openings. As she starts attacking him, the protagonist remains mostly on the defensive throughout the fight. He begins to observe that she had tremendous potential, but she wouldn't be able to beat him. Changing her fighting pattern to try to surprise our protagonist, she falls into his trap. Eugene wins the fight without needing to counterattack her. Garjan and Desaria want to join Eugene to defeat the direct lineage, something that has never happened before. Sometime later, Garjan was saying that they needed to join forces. As everyone's goal in defeating the boss at the center was the same, the main family will also join forces. The protagonist claimed to be sure he could do it alone, but since it had never happened before for the collateral lineage to defeat the direct lineage, Desaria insisted on their alliance. Sometime later, at the main family's house, the woman was thinking that the master of the Red Tower had been invited to this bloodline continuation ceremony. There's a chance he came here to take Iode as his disciple. From a very young age, Iode preferred reading books more than using his own body. He also had a lot of interest in magic and gradually learned. If Iode ends up becoming the disciple of the master of the Red Tower, he would have no choice but to leave the main family for a while. Meanwhile, Kian and Chao would continue to grow, and if this happens, it means the boy gave up his position as the successor, and their son will have to live forever marked as the son of the second wife. Even so, they kept their positions because she was confident, but now they were defeated by a mere child from the collateral lineage, until suddenly, she begins to think that if Eugene actually passes through the maze first, his talent being so exceptional as to humiliate the entire direct lineage, then her son's defeat could be covered up by all of that. 3 days later, the bloodline continuation ceremony finally began. Then a magic was created and cast towards the participants. Everyone received a small portion of the light, where Elias was told they needed to make their weapons first, shaping this light. Everyone started trying to do it immediately, until suddenly Chao managed to forge a blade with it, and after testing her new blade a bit, she asks what happens if it breaks. But the boy explains that it won't break since it's made of magic, just like the maze. She quickly asked if it was also possible to create animals instead of a sword, and the boy said she can only create things that are lifeless, which quickly made one of the boys ask what the reason for that was. And the man explains that it's a taboo of magic. The creation of life is a beautiful authority that only a living creature possesses. The boy is enchanted with the answer. Garjan suddenly appears with a giant sword. Without anyone asking anything, he began to explain that this is the same sword he uses at home, and was surprised to make one alike here. His sister, being skilled with the spear, ended up creating one. Kian created a sword. Iode also created a sword but seemed sad. Quickly everyone was armed for the maze, and the protagonist was the only one who had a sword and a shield. Chao asked the protagonist what he would do if they found themselves inside the maze, asking if he would fight her. This made the protagonist ask if fighting inside the maze was allowed, and the patriarch said yes. But he warns that quick judgment and cooperation are also important, since they are a family that shares the Lionhart blood. I don't know why she looked at him with the word family in mind and blushed, then all happy gave a little smile. The protagonist didn't understand and found it very unpleasant. After that, a necklace was distributed to everyone equally. This necklace would be connected to everyone's consciousness and somehow feel a great deal of stress in the maze. The necklace will react. If that happens, it will intervene anyway. This is simply a security mechanism. The man also explains that there is a way to ask for help by touching the necklace and shouting for help. Now that all explanations are over, it's time to enter. Although everyone is entering the same place, they will split up once inside. The cute girl wishes him good luck and he returns it. After entering the portal, we were now in a dark room. After delivering a blow to test it, he notices that the space is very tight. Someone with a long-range weapon here would fare badly, and that's one of the reasons he chose a sword and shield even though it's just a generic weapon. So he embarked on the challenge. Right from the start, many people were already facing problems and quickly activated their necklace. In the same instant, they were rescued and taken out of the maze. Only an hour had passed since it began, and 3 people had already failed. This left the patriarch disappointed, and with a cold look, he ordered them to go rest. Inside a tent, they observed with magic all the participants. The patriarch was very interested. Garjan seemed to be having trouble with the size of his sword, but his strength easily overcame these obstacles and quickly subdued all the monsters around him. Desaria used her agility to maintain control over the monsters and was avoiding unnecessary fights. Seeing Kian being cautious, avoiding several traps, they praised him, but they had no idea that it was because his mother had given him a map the night before. Chao used her instincts and moved very fast, but she was not yet mature enough and sometimes acted childishly. Iod, on the other hand, seemed intimidated by just one goblin in front of him, but suddenly changed his posture to admiration, thinking it was done with magic, and he was also very skilled. Lobirian noticed that he was interested in magic, and the patriarch says that the boy has always loved magic since he was a baby, and they even tried to invite a magic teacher from the capital for this, but the boy ended up refusing to learn halfway through. Hearing this, Lobirian asks why he gave up, and the patriarch said he surrendered to his reality. He believes that becoming the next leader of the family is his duty. The patriarch wished for Iod to follow the path of the arcane. If he still has a passion for magic, he would not be able to refuse the opportunity to be a disciple of the master of the Red Tower. The Tower Master says he cannot make any promises, but he can make him known. However, if his potential is insufficient, he cannot become his disciple. The patriarch understands the situation and says he just wants that boy to follow his dreams, revealing that in fact the boy always liked Mega Sienna more than the great hero Vermouth himself, and that is also the thought of the Tower Master. The patriarch then reveals that he himself is very different from the others since he does not consider his favorite character to be Sienna or even Vermouth. Curious, Lobirian then asks which one he liked the most. The patriarch was about to reveal, until pointing to one of the magically created creatures he asked the Tower Master to look at that. He was pointing his finger at our protagonist, who was facing the monster head-on. Another one quickly began to attack, and he dodged very easily, quickly cutting the monster from all possible sides, which impressed those who were watching. Even the patriarch was open-mouthed, unable to believe it. The Tower Master asked who that boy could be, and after the troll finally fell, he said that is Eugene Lionhart. Seeing this situation left him speechless. The patriarch was impressed that this boy was only 13 years old, and even though he had no experience fighting a troll, he was impassive and did not freeze with fear. The Tower Master warns that that troll was not created to fight. It's more like a trap created to find a way to escape. And he even made it larger than usual to scare these people. The patriarch says that's simply natural talent. The Tower Master asks if the patriarch knows what these people are called, and he says that these people are known as true geniuses. Garjan was also fighting a troll at this moment, but he was at a disadvantage at first. Still, he was facing it head-on. He ran with all his might towards the monster and cut its leg off, thus finishing the troll. He was crazed by the battle. When the monster's body finally dissolved and he fell to the ground, he really won but was all broken and with his muscles torn. Some of the blame for this was because he had fallen into several traps during the course and finally ended up falling to the ground. Sometime later we can see Kian looking at the troll's back with a stone in his hand. He understood that a monster of this size shouldn't be here, and also realized that it wasn't meant to defeat this beast. So he quickly threw a stone to the side, causing the troll's attention to turn to the wall, and he ran past it at full speed. The boy was really smart about this. Sometime later, he met with Chow, and quickly deduced that they were close to the center of the maze. He already starts boasting, saying that as long as she follows him, they won't get lost here, and it's obvious that he held grudges against the protagonist after being humiliated in front of this girl. Suddenly out of nowhere, she comes up with weird talk about how since this maze is an illusion, there could be any kind of monster here, even ghosts. This made the boy a little scared, but trying to seem reliable, he asked if she was afraid of ghosts, and he was about to tell her not to be afraid of something silly like that when we can see a hand. Someone covered in blood on their face appeared. He quickly let out a big scream of fright, and the person who had appeared also screamed very loudly, terrified. Noticing that it was Desire, he asks how she used to scare him, but she says that he scared her even more by screaming like that out of nowhere. The truth is that she wanted to come and find them here, but it didn't work out, so she turned around and started running to get away from them. Chow warns that she's trying to escape, and again, to appear as a nice guy in front of her. He said they need to go after her. They quickly start running after the girl with all their might. Desire says she's only running because she can't win 2 against 1, and she needs to find Garjan as soon as possible, until suddenly she falls into another trap. But thanks to her incredible speed, she manages to get through it, and continued running. Of course, Kian, noticing the trap, thought about going back, but realizing that the girl was behind him, he understood that there were no choices. He quickly used his agility, and using everything he could, he jumped over the trap and really reached the other side. Extending his hand, he asked the girl to jump too, and she does. She even did it without even needing his help. After a long time chasing Desire, they finally reached the big boss's room. Everyone was surprised by the size of the boss. The protagonist behind them asks why the 3 of them arrived here together. Kian turns, asking what he's doing here. He said he was waiting. He was curious to see who would arrive first to the boss's room. This caught them all by surprise. Chow says that actually, it was he who arrived first, and that's correct. Desire assumes that if he waited until now, he probably accepted her proposal from last night. He said it's not quite like that. However, he'll leave the spotlight to her. Even if he fights the boss alone, he can quickly win. And if he did that, wouldn't it be very sad for all of them who worked so hard to get here? Kian gets furious. The protagonist explains that the boss doesn't attack until he's at a certain distance from him, and at this moment, the boss is resting. So he says that in the same order they arrived here after him, they will fight the boss, pointing to Desire, then Chow, and lastly Kian, and asks, "What do you think?" Desire seemed frightened, asking if they should fight alone. The protagonist, on the other hand, mocks her, saying that she was just wandering around the maze, and if she thinks she can't win, she should just give up. Taking a handkerchief from his pocket, she says she won't give up. She tied the handkerchief around her head and started heading towards the boss. Kian asks if he's not going to fight. He said he will after they all finish. The boy said his turn won't come since he's going to defeat the boss, which makes the protagonist say that if the boy really defeats the boss, he'll call him Big Brother for the rest of his life. This made the boy blush completely, and very happily he said that the protagonist shouldn't forget his words. When the girl got close, the boss finally opened its eyes and stood up. She was very scared, but after coming this far, she couldn't retreat and went straight for the boss. She dodged the monster's first stomp, tried to pierce its hide, but couldn't. When she noticed that the beast's skin was too tough, the monster already caught her. At that moment she thought she was dead, but ended up being thrown away. Stopping near her group, Chow asked the protagonist why the boss threw her away instead of killing her, and he said it's because the creature isn't real, it's just magic. So as soon as she fell into the monster's hands, she was defeated. Kian stood up with a smile on his face. He said he would prove that the main family is on a completely different level than the collateral lineage. This made Eugene give a big smile. The boy started to activate again, transferring all that to his sword. There was mana flowing all over the blade. Desire noticed that it was a mana blade that could cut anything, but to create it at least 10 years of mana training were required. Then she finally noticed the difference between the main and collateral families. The protagonist, on the other hand, thought this wasn't a bad thing. The boy was confident, saying that even if he could use it for a short time, it was enough to defeat the boss. However, his mana dissipated from the sword. He He didn't understand why, but the protagonist quickly remembered the patriarch's words, that he wanted to test them without the advantage of the main family prejudicing the results. So probably the Tower Master made it so that no one could use mana to attack in the maze's center, meaning now things are equal for both sides. The boy still didn't understand the situation, so the protagonist asked if he thought he was going to lose. He should say he'd give up and wanted to go back, and he shouldn't get beat up just because he was stubborn. The girl was all happy looking at the boy, and I think that made the protagonist rent an apartment in Kian's head. Then he ran towards the boss. The monster made a frontal attack and they went cutting the side of its arm. After that, dodged a few more blows and counterattacked. At that moment, he knew these small blows wouldn't bring down the boss, so he ran with all his might aiming at the creature's legs, but the boss was smart enough to block with its knee. The boy was surprised by that, until the boss finally grabbed him and threw him away with all its might. He managed to land on his feet, but the protagonist warns him that he also lost. He was furious, but there was nothing to say. Then the protagonist says that she's next, but she simply says she doesn't want to fight since she can't use a sword in the middle of the maze. The protagonist was really surprised, saying she's smarter than his own brother. So after that, he went to the wall, equipped his shield, and started walking calmly towards the boss while she asked if he could defeat it. And he said he doesn't know if it would be possible. He doesn't know if it would be possible for him to lose to this boss. Walking calmly towards the boss, he wondered how he would do it. The creature came to strike from the front, and he quickly started climbing its arm. The boss tried to grab him with its other hand, but he was quickly on top of the labyrinth boss's head. He instinctively tried to strike it, but ended up hitting his own face. He was roaring in pain. Meanwhile, the protagonist took advantage to cut it in every possible way. Everyone was surprised to see this. Descendant noticed he was focused on hitting the monster's carotid artery, so he ran full speed ahead and thrust his sword into the monster, stuck his sword right in its throat, and the boss fell to the ground. Calmly, he cleaned his sword and asked if they all saw that. Kian froze instantly. The protagonist said he easily won this. The boy starts to say that if he had a sword he would have won easily too, but upon further reflection, he realizes that even with a sword it wouldn't have been as easy as the protagonist made it seem. And what he was feeling now wasn't just fear. His nervousness wouldn't go away, but he couldn't understand what the feeling was until finally the weapon started to disappear. The boss also vanished from the room. It seems the ceremony finally ended. Outside, everyone was impressed. The patriarch was laughing alone. He was wondering how it was possible for a child from the collateral family who didn't train his mana could defeat the Minotaur with such overwhelming ability. The boy said indeed it's surprising. A Minotaur is hard to face alone, and that's why he emphasized that teamwork was important in this ceremony. And that's why he designed the boss that way so everyone would work together. But that boy easily surpassed his traps and monsters, wondering even what the hell that boy could be. The patriarch seemed to be happy, so he said that since that boy arrived he did nothing but train, and this effort was also known in his hometown. With conviction he says that this boy was born to fight. He has a combat instinct that matches his body, and this ceremony was worth it just for discovering a treasure like this boy. But this makes the Tower Master ask if he's not bothered. Trying not to offend the patriarch, he said that boy is much better than his own children. And if at this age there's already such a big difference, imagine when he learns mana, how big that gap can become. The patriarch says that this is something to rejoice, as he will make the family name shine even more. So sweating cold, the Tower Master asks, and if he wants to become the next heir and the new head of the Lionhart family? The patriarch considered for a moment, but then said that the position of head of the family should be occupied by the best of them if his children couldn't, and that would be the boy's right. But if they are so weak as not to be able to defend the right they got when they were born, then they are not worthy to lead this family. The Tower Master says that as an outsider, he shouldn't have exaggerated so much, then undid all his magic, and he says he has one last piece of advice for him since they are longtime acquaintances. The patriarch should adopt this boy as his own son. Now that a child from the collateral family surpassed the direct lineage in the bloodline continuation ceremony, this is enough for the collateral families to underestimate the main family, and this can cause many misfortunes. The patriarch says that he appreciates the Tower Master's advice very much, even saying that it's a tempting offer. But at this moment they have another thing to do. They must congratulate that little monster coming here. After gathering all the maze participants, the patriarch looks at one of the children. He was looking at Iode, who didn't even reach the end of the maze because he got distracted by magic and monsters. The patriarch finds this very disappointing. On the other hand, the other two did very well and perhaps only didn't defeat the Minotaur due to lack of experience. The patriarch praises everyone's work, mentioning that he monitored them throughout the maze and was surprised. Then, he calls Eugene, saying he stood out the most among the 9 children in the lineage continuation ceremony, and he thanks him, obviously. The patriarch praises the choices he made to navigate the traps and monsters and says he even managed to defeat the troll without any injuries. The muscular boy is surprised to hear this. He begins to look at the protagonist and wonder how he did it with such a small and weak body. He even begins to think that if the boy took his family's medicine, he would become much stronger than he is now. Loberian admits he thought everyone would be lost in the maze, but it seems he underestimated everyone. This is because he is looking at Vermouth's descendants, who are all rare gems. The patriarch said they should rest now and informs that he will prepare a banquet for everyone. He then asks Loberian to take the children back, and they were all going back to the mansion until the patriarch calls for Eugene and says he should come with him. The girl named Seal was surprised to see the patriarch calling the boy and immediately asked if he was going to give the present to the boy now, and he said yes. She knows they are going to the underground chamber of treasures and she has never been there, and the only thing she could do was watch as they went. Sometime later, walking through the forest, the patriarch began to praise the protagonist, saying he did well using various weapons. Eugene just says the patriarch is praising him too much. The man says that's not true since he defeated the maze monsters with just a sword and shield, and also used a spear in a battle against Desaria. It seems all the information reaches the family leader easily. He says the weapon that currently symbolizes the Lionheart is the sword, but his ancestor, the great Vermouth, managed to use various types of weapons easily and even reached the point of being called the god of war, the master of everything. However, Vermouth was not the only one with such proficiency in all weapons. His companion Hamel was also a great master who was only behind Lord Vermouth. The protagonist, uncomfortable with the patriarch talking about his past life, says he read in books that Hamel was stupid. The patriarch laughs, saying he also read that, but says if Hamel wasn't so troublesome, the story wouldn't have any fun. Then he says that honestly he likes Mr. Hamel much more than Mr. Vermouth, which caught our protagonist by surprise, and he immediately asked why. The patriarch explains that instead of Vermouth, he prefers Mr. Hamel's qualities, which didn't appear in the books. He says Hamel felt his inferiority to Vermouth thousands of times, but never gave up. On the contrary, he always tried to get stronger and surpass his limits, and in the end he sacrificed himself to save his friends' lives. The protagonist thinks that the moral lessons passed down through the generations in books are very exaggerated, but even so, he calls for the patriarch, and completely happy, says he also prefers Mr. Hamel, which makes the patriarch very happy too. Until finally they arrived at the place they should. The guards easily cleared the passage for the patriarch. Inside the little house, there were stairs going down, and they went down. The patriarch says Eugene is the first person who is not a family head to enter here. Quickly he asks if he can really enter this place. The patriarch says that a promise is a debt, and this has already been discussed by the elders of the Senate. The Senate is where the old lions of the Lionheart reside, those who had great deeds even though they were from the collateral lineage. Eugene asks what would be the value of these treasures. The inheritances here were built hundreds of years ago, and there are also the inheritances left by the great hero Vermouth. This makes the protagonist ask if the sacred sword is also here, and he says yes, but the little boy cannot choose it. As the sacred sword is a symbol of the Lionheart family, it cannot be given to anyone. Eugene finds this somewhat disappointing, but the patriarch says there is another reason behind it, and it's because no other person has been recognized by the sacred sword itself, and he warns that he will understand when he sees for himself. Until they finally reach in front of a door, the patriarch bites his finger and spills a bit of blood on the pedestal. The object seems to react to the patriarch's blood, and the door begins to open. When it fully opens, the patriarch says he can go, because he will stay here outside and wait to not influence the boy's choice. He just thanks the family leader for the consideration and begins to enter the place. When the door closes, he gives a big smile. What was in front of him now was the grandiose sacred sword, the sword that the hero Vermouth used. Will our little prodigy be able to take that sword? The sacred sword is a sword that has existed since the origins of the sacred empire of Urez. It was considered a sword given by God. The sacred sword that was sealed for a long time in the central temple only recognized Vermouth as its master. 300 years ago, this was the sword that pierced the demon king of the massacre that was considered the 5th greatest entity in the demon kingdom of Helmuth. But after that, it was only used as a torch, which was regrettable. But now would it be possible for us to obtain this sword? Eugene grabbed the sword's hilt and gave a big smile. But even using all his strength, it was not possible to remove it. In fact, It didn't even budge, but he is aware that even if he could remove it from there he could not have it. So he decides to take a walk around the place and look for another treasure, until he finally finds something magnificent. This was Aspel, the sword of gluttony. It is a sword that can consume the mana it cuts and transform it into its own power, as well as being able to cut a powerful spell with a single blow. But the only reason the great hero could use it properly was because he was also an excellent mage, and at this moment this sword is too much for him. On his way, he also saw other weapons that were familiar, the dragon lance carbos. This was a lance that took a little time to heat up, but could spew flames rivaling those of a dragon's breath. There was also the storm blade Wyneth. This was a sword blessed by the Wind King, who is an elemental spirit. There was also the thundering thunder bow Parnoa. This was a bow that could attack with lightning and no matter the distance from your target. There was also Jabel, a flying illusory sword. It is a sword that when you infuse mana into it, it turns into a whip with hundreds of blades. Shield of Geddon. It is a shield that can ignore all attacks received simply as if they were nothing. All these weapons are so incredible that he would regret not picking any of them, but still, he couldn't see the lunar sword or the demonic lance. So he starts to think that since 300 years have passed, they probably already took the best weapons. Currently, he thinks the best choice is Wyneth, which can use wind elementals just by holding it, and can also summon the Wind King elemental if you have enough mana. In this world, even talented mages have difficulty controlling a low-ranking elemental, and this is no longer a concern when you hold this sword called Wyneth. He decides to take another look at the other things. There were several treasures in this vault. Besides weapons, there were also accessories and gems. Until something caught his attention, he quickly pulled out a necklace that was in one of the jars. According to him, this is a necklace he had in his past life. It was a memento of his parents who were devoured by monsters. He managed to personally avenge his parents a long time ago, but still he used this necklace until his last breath. But why is this necklace here? Could Vermouth have taken his body home? He begins to think that his friends must not have abandoned his body behind. The promise made between Vermouth and the Demon King of Imprisonment brings peace, but Helmuth and two Demon Kings are still standing. Even though today's tales say that they five together brought down the 5 Demon Kings, he begins to question what kind of promise they made while leaving his memento behind. He just wants to know what Vermouth was thinking. He even begins to deduce that they may have run out of strength because he died halfway, and all of this would be his fault. He doesn't want to hate all his friends and thinks they must have a reason for not being able to kill the Demon King. In this room, there are several weapons he desires, but he doesn't want this necklace, Hamel's memento, to stay in the Lionhart's treasure room. The patriarch was surprised by his choice, smiling. He says he liked this necklace. The man asks if he's really serious since there were incredible treasures there, and asks to see the necklace for a moment. The necklace is of a rough red and is not a valuable gem, nor does it have elegant craftsmanship. It's just a cheap necklace. And why was it in the treasure room? It was then that the patriarch decided to do something, to put the necklace on the pedestal to check the record, and ended up discovering that this necklace is not registered in the treasure room. In short, this is not a Lionhart treasure, so it's not something that should be inside. The man explains that this necklace has no value, and even if it were sold, he wouldn't get enough money to buy a cheap sword, and asks if he's sure about this. Eugene, very happy, says yes, so the patriarch said that if he really wants, there's no problem. However, he'll have to ask the mage Loberian to evaluate it, since it's an unknown item and there's a chance it's enchanted with some kind of spell. The protagonist asks if he can have the necklace after it's evaluated. The patriarch promises yes, and also says that technically he didn't choose a Lionhart treasure, and tells him to return to the treasure room and pick a different treasure. Eugene is surprised by this. The man says this was the original promise, so he can go back there and take any treasure he wants. He thanks and runs back into the room. Eugene was very happy, saying that the man was very humble and couldn't even believe he was a descendant of the stubborn Vermouth. So having no more reasons to hesitate, he starts picking the Wyneth Storm Blade. Drawing his new sword, he says he chose her. It has to be her. When night fell, the protagonist was back at the castle. Desira was furious, asking why he didn't pick up the spear since he is so skilled with it. He just says that the choice is his and says he's also very good with the sword. The muscular one just says she seems very light, trying to explain that a hammer or an axe would be much better with his strength. He even starts calling him to take steroids with him, but the protagonist refuses. Desira asks him to ignore this bodybuilder and tells him to draw the sword. Seeing no problem with the situation, he really draws his sword from its sheath, explaining that this is the Winus Storm Blade. He said this is a sword that has the blessing of the Wind King's element, and he can call it when he properly trains his mana. She said that was very cool. However, she would still go for a spear. Eugene mentions that there were indeed many spears in that place, which impresses her. She immediately starts talking about the dragon's spear that unleashes flames like a dragon's breath with each attack, but he pretends not to know about it. Then she talks about the demonic lance Ruintus, saying that this is the strongest weapon in Vermouth's entire arsenal. The bodybuilder says he also knows this lance, even saying that it was used by the Demon King of Brutality, which made her hit the boy. And talking about the Demon King of Brutality brought memories to Eugene. 300 years ago there were about 5 Demon Kings in the Kingdom of Helmuth. The rank 1 was the Demon King of the Apocalypse. Rank 2 was the Demon King of Incarceration. Rank 3 was the Demon King of Delirium. Rank 4 was the Demon King of Brutality. And the last of rank 5 was the Demon King of Massacre. Until the bodybuilder says she is wrong about the strongest weapon in the hero's arsenal, saying that the strongest weapon was the Relentless Crusher, Gigalas. They begin to argue that the ranking of the Demon Kings does not influence the strength of the weapon. The protagonist just thinks that those 2 weapons were the only ones in Vermouth's arsenals that were used by Demon Kings. They are too big a threat to be kept in the treasure vault, and perhaps they are sealed somewhere. They were still discussing about the weapons. The protagonist just thought that was very childish. And stepping away, he thinks that if he were really to choose one of Vermouth's arsenal weapons, he wouldn't think twice. He would take the Lunar Blade, the sword-shaped destruction that was sealed in the depths of Helmuth. In fact, both the Demon Kings of Brutality and Massacre were killed by the devastating light of the Lunar Blade. And now, taking his battle stance, he thinks he's happy to be holding a real sword for the first time in this life. Then he cuts. They were surprised by what they were seeing. Eugene's skills were simply fantastic. He was sliding with his sword with great ease. With each step the cuts had fluid movements, and all that seemed like a simple dance where the sword belonged to his body. He could attack with all his strength, or even make precise cuts that left everyone jaw-dropped. The bodybuilder could only say that this fencing was simply magnificent. Even the spear-addicted girl found it very beautiful. Switching to the family patriarch's office, Loberian was checking the necklace, and he had a somewhat downcast look. Putting the necklace on the table, he says there is no magic in this necklace. He even questions if this necklace was really in the treasure vault. The patriarch confirms yes. Loberian insists, asking if that boy is not deceiving him, but the patriarch asks what reason he would have. If he hadn't allowed the boy to take another treasure, that boy would now be without any treasure. Thinking in this way, Loberian admits that would be a very risky move, so he says they should check. He says there is no magic in the necklace but will look deeper since they have come this far. The patriarch asks how he will do that, and he says there is a spell that can read mana memories, and it is a spell created by the great master Sienna, the wise. Mana exists everywhere. Most objects have mana present in them, so he will read the mana memories contained in this necklace. The patriarch says he is counting on him. Then the mage starts his magic. Some time later it began to take effect. In the memories initially he noticed nothing interesting, but it was possible to perceive that the necklace is at least over 100 years old. He even manages to find where this necklace was bought in the streets of the capital, but couldn't see anything else after that. So he even says that the magic of the treasure room must have interfered with the necklace's mana. The patriarch, realizing that the necklace is over 100 years old, says that there is no one alive who can remember where this necklace came from. So the mage asks what he will do. Galate says that since it's not a magical item, he will give it to Eugene. That boy wanted it so much that he would throw away a treasure just to have it. Loberian says the patriarch seems to have started to like the boy, and he just smiles. Then he gets up. Looking out the window he asked why wouldn't he like. He even says he will make that offer Loberian told him about to the boy. Loberian was somewhat surprised by the situation. The patriarch says he will indeed adopt Eugene Lionhart as his son. He will now be part of his family. The next day someone new was greeting Eugene. This person's name was Guillaume. The protagonist knows well who Guillaume Lionhart is. He is the older brother of the family head Galate Lionhart, a weirdo who didn't marry even after the appropriate age and joined Galate on his journeys. But even so, he introduces himself saying his name is Eugene Lionhart, and the guy says he knows his name. Pulling Eugene, he says he is the collateral boy who won against the main family in the bloodline continuation ceremony. Eugene, trying to get away, asks why he came to talk to him, and the guy explains that his brother wanted to send a different knight, but he took the opportunity and came himself. In short, he wanted to see Eugene personally. He heard a lot about Eugene but didn't have the opportunity to see him at the bloodline continuation ceremony. And that's because only the head of the family can observe the ceremony. Although this time Loberian participated because he needed to help. Gion states he's not mad about it, he's just saying it's tradition. He even begins to think that it will seem like he's dissatisfied with the family rules if he continues to speak in this way. But Eugene says he doesn't care about that, which makes the man happy, saying his brother wouldn't care about something like that either. Now the protagonist understands why this man hasn't married yet, and it's probably because of the free will he has in his personality. John doesn't know why the family leader called Eugene but says it was probably to congratulate him. Eugene says he has already received congratulations from the leader, so it seems that not even Mr. Guillaume knows the reason. So, Guillaume kind of assumes a posture where he knows but can't speak, and just says it would be great for him to see Eugene more often. Eugene said it would also be great to see him. Then he knocks on the door saying his name. The leader on the other side says he can come in. Guillaume opens the door for Eugene and gives him a big smile, which made Eugene think his personality is good but somewhat authoritative. So finally, they arrived at the great family leader's room. The man apologizes for calling him so suddenly and asks him to sit down. They were sitting facing each other while coffee was served at the table. The patriarch put the necklace on the table and says he asked the mage Loberian to evaluate, and in the end it was just a normal necklace. Eugene didn't expect much of this. The patriarch also says they read the mana memory in the necklace but there was no anomaly. Eugene is surprised to hear about mana memory. That's because mana memory magic was from the great mage Sienna. So he asks what was the memory in the necklace. Galade says it seems the necklace was sold on the streets of the capital over 100 years ago. This caught our protagonist off guard since he is sure that this necklace was the one he used over 300 years ago. So there's no way that could be true. But there was also no reason for Loberian to lie about this. Could he have read the memory wrong? Then he begins to theorize that probably someone overwritten the memory with a new magic at the level of a tower master. But who could have done that? Perhaps Vermouth? Realizing he can't know the reason, he asks if he can keep this necklace. The patriarch said yes since he promised. Eugene thanked him for the kindness and promptly put the necklace around his neck. The patriarch continues the conversation saying that he didn't call him here just to talk about the necklace. He says it's kind of sudden, but he believes it won't be a bad offer for him since it's actually an offer for his future. Eugene didn't seem to like that much. The patriarch was going to continue the conversation when Eugene interrupts him saying that the girl's seal is kind and cute but he doesn't want to think about marriage now. He even remembers that even though he beat up her brother and left him all beaten up, she was still happy with him trying to be friendly, and probably all of this was to arrange a political marriage. This caught the family leader off guard. Eugene continues saying that he's too young to think about marriage and also needs his father's permission, until the patriarch interrupts saying that he's mixing things up and says he doesn't intend to marry him to Seal. This time caught the protagonist off guard. He quickly became very embarrassed. He just confused things and was thinking about getting married at only 13 years old. But if it wasn't for that, why would the patriarch call him here? And the family leader says he called him to adopt him as his son. Again he was caught off guard. Surely this is a good way to tie him to the main family. He didn't even know what to say properly since all of this was very sudden. But the patriarch laughing says it's not as sudden as a marriage proposal, which embarrassed Eugene again. The patriarch says that if Eugene wants, he's also willing to invite his father Gerhard to the main family. Eugene says that in this case he would have two fathers. The patriarch says he doesn't need to think too much about it, and says that it will only mean that his family now belongs to the main family. He goes on to say that he is the father of 3 children, and is not trying to steal a son from Gerhard. Of course, he hasn't even talked to the man yet but will respect him as his own brother. But do you think the protagonist should accept this situation? The patriarch even gave the opportunity for Eugene's father to join the main family as well, so I think it's a good option for our protagonist. But was he thinking about marrying Seal? This protagonist is a bit of a flirt, huh? Eugene asks if by refusing this proposal to be adopted, his father will lose the patriarch's respect? And the patriarch said no, but standing up. He says it's a bit embarrassing to say this, but he's not that childish. If Eugene refuses, it would be a pity, but he would respect his decision and wish the best for the boy's future. Eugene says he can't decide this on his own, and says he needs to ask his father what he thinks. Galade says he will send an emissary to bring his father here, and they can make the decision after the banquet. Eugene suddenly says the patriarch said accepting this proposal would be the best for his future, catching the patriarch off guard. Eugene wants to know exactly what that means. The man says that if he grows up in the main family, he can enjoy numerous benefits. First of all, he would have several impressive knights who would be available to teach him various things at any time. Eugene says that if this really happens, he would like to learn from the best warrior possible. Then with a broad smile he says that if he becomes the patriarch's adopted son, he would like to learn from the patriarch himself. The man says nothing, just curious. And of course, our protagonist wants to know how strong the Lionhart family patriarch is. So he smiles, saying of course he could teach him, but if he wants to learn from the best, there's someone more suitable for that. Eugene asks who that person would be. He says it's Guillaume. He was probably stronger in the past, but this boy has already surpassed him. The patriarch also asks if Eugene's father taught him anything about mana. Eugene says no, and that was by his own choice in order to focus on physical combat. The patriarch finds this decision admirable, then explains that you need a mana crystal that can be found inside a high-level monster. But the more efficient a mana stone is, the more expensive and difficult it is to obtain it. Besides, to use such a stone successfully, you will also need the help of someone extremely capable. Probably all this is very difficult to find in Eugene's father's family. That environment is totally inadequate to nurture the boy's talent. But that's not something he can say now, or else the boy will hate the family he was born into. So after that they continued talking for a while longer until the protagonist decided to return to his quarters. On the way back while walking, he smelled something coming to his nostrils. Quickly he deduced that this smell was a perfume, and that it was coming from someone behind that pillar. He quickly deduced that this person was waiting for him, and then he continued walking until an adult woman came out from behind the pillar, acting as if it were just a coincidence their encounter, and the first thing she did was ask to proceed with the formalities. Immediately he prostrated himself, saying his name to the woman. She said she heard he was talking alone with the family patriarch, but had no idea they would talk for so long, which led him to ask if she had something to discuss with. She thought this child was bold and arrogant, not seeming to have boundaries. She began to understand why he fought against the child from the main family, even thinking that this should not be a surprise to her. But she knew that this boy would experience an unbelievable growth in the near future, and it would be better to be on friendly terms with him rather than becoming his enemy. Immediately it came to her mind that it wouldn't be bad for her to really marry him to her daughter Seal. So she says she's curious about what they talked about in there. Eugene replies that he shouldn't disclose matters he had with the patriarch alone. Embarrassed, she says that's true and she's not interrogating him, but she has one more thing to tell him. The boy was confused. Making a show again, she says she still hasn't apologized for her son being rude to him the other day, but he directly says there's no need to apologize, as he resolved the incident on the same day. The woman nervously says he's very benevolent for his age and says she will reprimand her son, then hopes they'll get along well in the near future. Smiling broadly, he says of course they will, since they are all part of the same family and share the same last name after all. This made her furious. He wasn't wrong about that, but she felt unsettled hearing it from this child's mouth. Until suddenly he asks if he can leave now. She says yes and apologizes for keeping him occupied for so long. Then Eugene turns around and starts to leave. He knows well that this was Anasilla, the matriarch of the Lionhart family, who had been against him from the start, just because he was from the secondary family. Of course, he prefers to avoid unnecessarily involving himself with this woman. But is it possible to leave this crazy woman behind? 2 days later, Gerhard Lionhart arrived from his city so far away. The man guided by Guillaume was incredulous with everything he saw. He couldn't believe that his son had actually won the lineage succession ceremony this time. Crying, he thought his son had won against the main family's son. He knows Eugene has shown talent from a young age, but he as his father didn't have the ability to support this talent. He thought he would have to face reality during the ceremony, and that the difference between the main family and its branches, which cannot be overcome with talent and hard work alone, would be revealed. At least that's what he thought at the time, until someone called out to him. It was his son Eugene calling him. He was giving him a big smile. The man ran with all he could and gave his son a big hug. He was crying a lot and could hardly speak. The only words that could be heard from his mouth were that he was very proud to have him as his son. Eugene, on the other hand, says he warned his father when he was leaving his small hometown. He warned that he would bring good news when he called next time. The man, still in tears, says he really said something like that, but apologizes, saying he didn't believe his son, until finally he noticed the patriarch's presence in the place. Quickly he apologizes for the delayed introduction and says his name is Gerhard Lionhart from the city of Jidal. The patriarch also introduces himself as Gillard Lionhart and apologizes for the sudden invitation. The nervous man says it's no problem and thanks him for inviting. The patriarch, saying he doesn't want to take up his time with his son, asks if they can talk inside. Gerhard says yes, of course. Then, somewhat apprehensive, he enters the room with the patriarch. After a while he already knew about the adoption situation. The patriarch also mentions that if he adopted Eugene, the man would also be included in the main family. Gerhard didn't seem to like the situation much, so he quickly stood up and apologized in advance in case what he said next was disrespectful. Then he says he appreciates his concern for his son, but as a father he can't help but worry about his son's future. The patriarch asks what kinds of concerns. He knows the patriarch has good intentions, but he's worried that other members of the main family will bother his son. That's because the patriarch already has 3 children in the main family, and if Eugene is adopted, he will be considered an intruder. The patriarch seems to understand the situation. He doesn't want to limit the child's future and knows that the main family takes lineage legitimacy very seriously, and he's sure they won't accept a child from the collateral family becoming part of the main family. In addition, even if Eugene joins the main family, he may not be able to succeed to the position of family leader, but he says the boy will be fine thanks to his talent. He can flourish within the main family. If Eugene becomes his son, he will become close to the other children, and as a result, he will have a better future available to him. Gerhard says the patriarch is right and asks to talk to his son first before making a decision. Eugene was outside retrieving his sword until everything vibrated. He swung his sword several times at once. His father was coming towards him with his head down. Noticing his father's approach and the expression of sadness on his face, he deduces that the conversation must not have been very good for him. So he quickly asks what's with his father's expression. The man, looking at his son, notices he is carrying the sword he chose from the treasures of the main family. Quickly he thinks that even if he sold everything he owns, he wouldn't be able to buy this sword. So with a look of disgust, he says the family leader would like to adopt him. Eugene says he already knew that. He says he wishes Eugene really becomes the man's son, since it would be beneficial for his future. But trembling, he says this may put him through some tough times. And the boy knows that well, so pointing to himself he says his father knows him well, and he knows Eugene would never let anyone take advantage of him. The man began to sob again with these words. Then he says the boy was named by him along with his deceased mother, and he must not forget that. Eugene says that even if he is adopted, his only true father is Gerhard Lionhart. Again the man breaks down in tears with his son's words. The decision to be adopted has already been made. Of course, he had no intention of becoming the family leader, but probably no one will believe that. The first wife Theonis and the second wife Anasilla will have no choice but to keep him on a short leash. The protagonist knows there are 2 ways to deal with discontent and hostility. The first is simply to ignore, and there's the second way. Drawing his sword, he cuts with all his might, saying the second way is to destroy them directly. Then the day came when the Lionhart family patriarch invited all the families of the children who participated in the lineage succession ceremony to the banquet. Eugene's father soon became the target of several questions. Just looking at the stereotypes, it was possible to see Desira's father and the muscle guy's father, who was already offering steroids to Eugene's father. They even begin to consider creating a group to get to know each other better. Eugene didn't intend to join them, as he would receive unnecessary attention. Not far from there, it was possible to see the boy who was defeated by the protagonist with his mother. He was completely dejected. His mother only said he needed to have confidence. From now on he will be compared to that boy. People who look at him will think of the defeat he had in the duel against Eugene and will laugh at the fact that someone from the direct lineage failed to win for the first time in history. This left the boy even more down. The woman said he had no choice and only should feel the shame. But even if people laugh, he is still her son, so he is part of the Lionhart direct lineage and should be proud. The boy agrees. She says Eugene may not become the patriarch, but he shouldn't be relieved by that. He has many disadvantages and will need to work even harder to become the patriarch. She orders him to become friends with Eugene. They must build a brotherly relationship so that he can be an ally in the future. The boy understood the situation, but thinking about how he will approach Eugene makes him ashamed. On the other hand, there was someone who was not ashamed, asking if if they are brothers now? Eugene says yes, and she asks if he can't call her big sister. He denies her request, and she says he has to call his brother big brother just because he was born 5 seconds after her. She begged with all her might for him to call her big sister just once, but he would never call a girl only 13 years old big sister. He even said he would prefer to die than to do that. Sometime later in the patriarch's room, Loberian was saying he wouldn't accept him as a pupil unconditionally. He was saying this to Iode, who would initially be tested for aptitude in the Arath Tower. The boy asked what would happen if he really had an aptitude for summoning magic. The man says it would be great, but Arath won't recognize the name Lionhart, so unless he has good talent, Loberian won't be able to accept him as a disciple. The boy, somewhat saddened, understands the situation, but the man says that as an old acquaintance of the Lionhart family patriarch even before becoming master of the Red Tower, he affirms that Iode will have many opportunities. He even says he will protect him from the voices of discrimination, besides helping him find the perfect environment for his type of magic. This made the boy very happy. He thinks that even if he doesn't become Loberian's pupil, he will be happy to be able to escape the pressure from his family and learn magic. So he looked at the patriarch as if seeking approval. The man simply said he must make his own choice. He was about to say something when his mother interrupted him, saying that this was an opportunity his father gave him, so he must accept it with gratitude. However, holding him, she says the boy is her son and is destined to become the patriarch of this family. Even when he is in Arath, he must not forget that. The patriarch immediately scolds the woman. She says she is just encouraging her son as a mother should do. Of course, she is only thinking about the rivalry she has against the second wife. But at this moment they have no choice. As Iode is still weak, he must form connections with several mages and increase his own power within Arath. So she gives him one last warning, saying that he is the legitimate son of Lionhart and must be proud of it. The boy simply agrees. Then on the day after the banquet, Loberian left with Iode towards Arath. The other children of the secondary families also returned to their homes. Eugene and Gerhard ended up staying in the empty building. Today would be the day when Eugene would have his first mana lesson after reincarnating. Breathing is the act of collecting mana from the atmosphere when inhaling. Body training is when you move your body to collect mana, either of which is easy, but breathing is more common. In his past life, he used body training to practice mana development, and then switched to breathing, following his friend's advice. The Lionhart mana training technique is breathing. Eugene finally arrived at the appointed place. Guillaume is happy with his arrival and says they should start now. They are now in a mana vein, which is where mana is concentrated. The mana vein they are in now did not arise naturally but was created by Vermouth himself personally 300 years ago. His instructor asks if he is nervous. He says he's actually super excited. The man encourages him, saying that the first time he will have many difficulties, even though it's easier to feel mana when young. He even mentions that Cyan and Seal started mana training when they were only 6 years old, and it took them 4 days to be able to feel the mana. Iode, on the other hand, took a whole week. As for the secondary family, they usually take a whole month to even be able to feel the mana. But he says for Eugene it won't be so long, since they have the mana vein and will also have the instructor's help. Eugene asks how many days it will take for this to happen, and he says around 10 days maybe. He smiled while thinking that 10 days wouldn't work. He states that it won't even take 10 minutes for this to happen. So they continued their way until they finally entered a cabin. The instructor points, saying it's this way. They start descending a staircase, which leads to an apparently empty place. The instructor says he should sit there in the middle, and that's what he does. Then he continues, saying that the mana training technique passed down through generations in the family and inherited from their ancestor, the great Lord Vermouth, has a rule that the secondary family cannot inherit this technique. So everyone in the secondary family is taught the red flame ritual, which does not have the utility of the original technique. The technique he will learn is passed only through the main family. The boy begins to glow intensely, saying that the technique he will learn is the white flame technique. Eugene, although he doesn't remember the name and the ritual of the white flame, he surely remembers this form, because this was the form of his companion Vermouth. In his past life he was never able to know what those flames were capable of. The instructor says that since it's difficult for him to feel mana now, they should start by focusing on breathing first, until suddenly Eugene says he can feel it. Guillaume says it must be just his imagination, and then conjured some mana on his finger, thinking he will test him. Pointing to Eugene, the mana starts circulating around the boy. He even says that as he thought the boy still can't feel the mana yet, but Eugene points it out, saying he can feel the mana from this side. then starts moving his finger towards the mana as it moves, asking how long he should continue with this. Gion was incredulous at what he was seeing. How was it possible for this boy to be learning so fast? He begins to nervously laugh, then he approaches the boy crouching, and says that now that he can feel the mana, they should start with him concentrating on everything that is happening in his body. Eugene agrees. Gion tells him to breathe slowly, and that's what he starts doing. He has to imagine he's breathing in the flow of mana with each breath, and when he inhales he must imagine he's guiding the mana to the right path. He must guide the mana into his heart. Gion releases Eugene's hands so he can start feeling the mana by himself. He started to step back, saying the boy was doing well. Eugene was doing it perfectly on his own now. The instructor couldn't stop being amazed every moment with this prodigy. He stayed for a while observing, but he couldn't stop thinking this is madness. Eugene thinks that although feeling and breathing in mana wasn't difficult in his past life, this body is truly amazing and very good at absorbing mana. He can tell that the amount of mana inside his body is growing with each breath. However, it seems there's a limit to how much mana this young body can accept for now. His heart seems to be at its limit, so somewhat exhausted he decides to stop. Eugene looked at the instructor without saying anything. The man was also looking at him incredulously. This is because the size of Eugene's mana core is incredible. People should regularly train for a long time to reach this size. Then Gion says he's a great monster. Eugene thanks him for his compliment, now says they should head back. On the way back, the man explains that the difference between the red flame ritual and the white flame ritual is the core division. The white flame can divide its core and store much more mana inside its body. Besides, the divided cores work together to increase the strength of their cores exponentially. They call these divided cores stars. In the Lionhart family history, there was only one person who managed to reach 10 stars, and this was the creator of the white flame ritual, the great hero Vermouth. Very happy, Gion says that he and his brother, the patriarch, are currently at 6 stars. All the children are at 1 star and will probably reach 2 by next year. So as they started their training at the age of 6, it seems it will take a total of 8 years for them to go from 1 to 2 stars. Eugene asks, and what about him? How long should it take? The guy says it will be much faster if he doesn't slack off and be lazy with his training. So he says he'll do his best, but there's no way someone who received a much better body than his old one and is still learning Vermouth's training technique could slack off in his training. The protagonist doesn't know if he will be able to reach 10 stars, but he will adapt things if he can't, and thanks Vermouth for leaving the white flame ritual for his descendants. Sometime later they arrived back at the mansion. Gion says he will tell the patriarch what happened and asks him to rest. At that moment he said yes, but in reality, he doesn't intend to rest. Now that he has done his mana training, there is something he needs to do. Suddenly the maid appears completely frightened, running up to him saying that he finally returned. He just orders her to go to his room and fetch his sword for him. Sometime later she returned with the sword. Of course, he doesn't know if this will work, but removing it from the sheath and using mana, it was possible to see dust starting to lift from the ground. Quickly the wind became uncontrollable, and it was possible to see a hurricane forming in front of his maid. Eugene had summoned the great wind spirit king, who was asking if it was Hamel who had summoned him. But how did the wind spirit king Tempest know it was him? The spirit was asking at this moment if Hamel had really reincarnated, but where could the spirit know him from? Then he said he would never forget Vermouth's companion's soul. He explains that no matter how much time passes and the face changes, the soul never changes. It had been a long time since he was summoned by the Wyneth sword and became interested in being used by one of Vermouth's descendants. It was then that he felt Hamel's soul. Eugene furiously asks why Vermouth didn't kill the demon kings. He begins to order the spirit to tell him what happened after he died. The spirit says he doesn't know Vermouth's motivations and says that in the battle against the demon king of incarceration, Vermouth sheathed his sword. Eugene questions what happened. Completely terrified, the spirit says their fight was fierce but had no results, and the last ones standing were Vermouth and the demon king of incarceration. At this moment the man sheathed his sword. He not only didn't kill the demon king of incarceration but also didn't head to the demon king of destruction's castle. Eugene was furious, telling the spirit not to lie to him, and asked what kind of oath Vermouth made with the demon king of incarceration. The spirit says he knows nothing about it, but Vermouth was furious, asking what he knew and even offending him. The king of spirits then explains that only those who were present there should know, since from the moment Vermouth sheathed his sword he could no longer intervene or know what was happening. Eugene furiously says the only ones left standing in the end were Vermouth and the demon king. So was the spirit asking him to dig Vermouth out of the grave and ask him directly quickly? The spirit just says he has no more time. With Eugene's little mana he shouldn't even be able to summon him here, and it was the king of spirits who forced open the door to come here now. And then he needs to close it. Eugene began to scream saying he should tell before leaving, but the spirit says next time he will do it when he's strong enough. At that moment Eugene was completely exhausted and ended up fainting. The maid was frightened by this. The boy simply appeared unconscious and with a nosebleed. Some time later he was in his quarters when he opened his eyes. He had a severe headache, probably due to mana exhaustion. It seems that spirits remember people through the soul. Eugene initially thought he wasn't a reincarnation of Hamel, but that his memories had been implanted in him. But now it's clearer than ever. He is Hamel from 300 years ago who reincarnated with the memories of his past life. Suddenly the maid entered through the door, asking if he was okay. He said yes and asked how long he had been unconscious. She said it was about half a day, and she warns that the family patriarch and Mr. Guillaume are wanting to see him. Sometime later they arrived at the location. The information they had from the maid is that after he drew his sword a great storm blew everywhere. He went straight to the point asking if he really summoned a spirit. Initially he hesitated to answer, and as that must have been seen everywhere he can't lie, but he will hide some things. So he says that the king of the wind spirits appeared to him. Both were completely shocked by this. Eugene says that the Spirit King had not been called for a long time and wanted to see who the child was. Guillaume was surprised because no one but Vermouth was able to personally summon the Spirit King. He explains that the Spirit King said he was still not strong enough but looked forward to seeing him again someday, and after that returned to the spirit realm. The patriarch begins to laugh in surprise and says that Eugene is an amazing boy. He says that Guillaume told him about what happened in the mana training, and that alone was surprising, but he also managed to catch the attention of the king of the wind spirits. Eugene just smiled at the situation. The patriarch warns that after he rests for a few days Guillaume will continue his training. Initially the patriarch's plans were to go on a trip, but now they must focus on concentrating Eugene's talents. The boy thanks but says he doesn't want to take up too much of their time. Guillaume tells him not to think like that since he himself wants to personally teach Eugene. He also says that he will teach Cyan and Seal at the same time, and the patriarch will help with all this. The patriarch, on the other hand, only hopes that the children take this as a stimulus. The girl is now teasing her brother saying that Eugene got a star in the white flame ceremony. The boy says he already knows, trying to show he doesn't care. She continues saying that they took a long time to achieve this compared to Eugene, but the boy says they took about a month and that this is much faster than almost all their ancestors. And the girl reinforces that Eugene managed to do what they did in a month, in just one day. Both ran towards each other to face off, and thus the clash of swords happened. Back in Eugene's room, he gets up grabbing his sword and summoning a spirit. Probably with the mana he has now he can only summon an inferior spirit. He immediately asked the fairy if her king said anything, but she said nothing. Probably inferior spirits don't have the intelligence to speak, which makes him furious, telling her to go to the king and tell him that if he's lying, he'll kill him himself. The fairy didn't seem to like that very much, and flew over his hair, disappearing into the air behind him. At this moment Eugene thought that he was the only one who died in Vermouth Castle. Only Vermouth and the demon king of incarceration know about the oath made. At some point he will have to return to Vermouth Castle. He will also have to return to Arath, Sienna's homeland. He will have to return to Uras, Elisa's homeland, and to Ruhr, Molin's homeland. But at this moment it is impossible for him to travel to countries with this young body. But someday he will know the whole truth.
I have plans that I cannot share with you right now.
With that, time passed. Eugene Lionhart was now 17 years old, and had an admirable physique, even surprising himself with it. At this moment, he had already achieved 3 stars in the White Flames method, but all of this still wasn't enough for him. To fully utilize this monstrous body, he needed to tap into more than just his knowledge from his past life. So when he returned to the exterior of Lionhart Mansion, he was saying that he needed to go to Arath to learn magic. He was telling this to Cyan, who was surprised. He even started mocking the other boy, suggesting that something happened during his White Flames training. The boy quickly deduced that he had indeed succeeded, and he said yes, he had 3 white stars at the age of 17. He was emanating an incredibly powerful white aura. The boy couldn't believe what he was seeing. Panicking, he questioned how this was possible. This was because Eugene was introduced to mana and the white flame 7 years after him. Eugene says it makes sense since he's a genius.
I want to kill you.
Haha, you can't do that to your little brother.
But also it's not like Eugene didn't beat him up every morning. But that's also because Cyan asked for duels every morning. Facts are undeniable. Cyan frustratedly asks why he wants to go there to learn magic and questions if he has forgotten what happened to their brother named Iod. After going to Arath and learning magic, when the continuation ceremony ended, his talents were not good enough to become a disciple of Lord Loberian. So even though he managed to enter the Red Tower through certain connections, he achieved nothing, and even now, 4 years later, he must be just wandering around the magic tower. Eugene gets furious, saying he has no limits when it comes to talking about his older brother. Cyan, on the other hand, tells him not to act like he knows everything, even saying he'll go to Arath to learn magic, since if he does, probably Seal will be sad. Eugene mocks, asking if he's talking about the same person who has hardly said anything so far and trained alone all this time, and walks away saying that's too bad for her. At this moment, Eugene is going to meet with the head of the family, probably to report his 3-star status. He will gain early permission to go to the tower. There was nothing Cyan could do. He could only kick the sword and curse. Once again, Eugene was showing off to him. The patriarch of the family was incredulous upon hearing Eugene's request. Eugene wants to go to the magic tower to learn about this. The patriarch panics, saying there has never been anyone who achieved 3 stars at Eugene's age, and if he continued, he would probably reach 4 stars before becoming an adult. Eugene, on the other hand, says he received something upon reaching 3 stars today, and says that if he continues doing the things he did in the main house, he doesn't think he can keep growing much. He wants to learn many more things and still doesn't know if he has talent for magic. But if he starts studying there now, he might see mana from a different perspective. In summary, he is sure all of this will be very useful for him in the future. So, prostrating himself, he pleads for the patriarch to please accept his request. The patriarch remains reluctant to accept the request, but upon looking at the prodigy boy, he asks the boy to raise his head. As the head of the family, he could never suppress his burning desire to learn, so he says he understands his intentions, but asks Eugene to promise that he will never get involved with black magic. This is because in Arath there is a black tower where black mages gather. Unlike in the past, there are no rumors of danger nowadays, and their public perception is not so bad, but still the Lionharts are descendants of the great Vermouth, and thus they have an unspoken rule about black magic. Eugene already knows a lot about demon kings and black mages since he experienced it 300 years ago, so he tells the patriarch not to worry about it, asserting that he also hates black magic. After leaving the patriarch's room, Eugene hears someone knocking on the door next to him. The person calling him asks to talk to him real quick. Eugene asks why she doesn't come out and talk here, but she says she doesn't want to, as she was training until now and smells like sweat. This was Seal asking if he was really going to Arath. At this point, Cyan had already told her everything, even about him reaching the 3 stars, so she asks why he's leaving. He says he wants to learn magic. Seal says they have elemental spirits magic, and he can even ask a mage from the capital to come here and train him if needed. She also starts saying that while he's away, Cyan's and her skills may catch up to him. He, on the other hand, says it's okay. It'll be more fun to face them in duels. He even says it's been a long time since they dueled last. The hesitant girl asks if they start dueling from now on. Eugene would give up going to Arath to train magic, and he says of course not, he'll go anyway. Seal starts asking things like, how long will he stay there? Why does he have to stay away for so many years? Asking if he knows that things will become harder after he leaves the house? Even asking about his real father? Eugene says his father will be fine without him. The man has already perfectly adjusted to life in the main house, and as he goes out hunting frequently, he has also lost a lot of weight. She mentions that even Uncle Guillaume will be sad about his departure, and he says that might be true. She also asks about his brother Cyan, saying he seemed very sad when he came to tell her all this, but smiling, Eugene says he'll go anyway and asks her to continue training diligently. This caught the girl off guard, but Eugene was already leaving. Quickly she opened the door to see him, asking if he was really going. Eugene just waved to her, which made her say he's terrible. That's because she also doesn't want him to go. I admit I would accept a little romance in this work, but the protagonist is also right to refuse a loose woman to seek more power. Eugene now went to meet his real father. He was advising him not to hang out with bad people and even not to be lazy with his studies. Eugene was also urging the man not to stop exercising just because he's not around. Gerhard just laughed. At this point Eugene was taller than his own father. He also seemed more mature. So Gerhard wishes him a good trip. Now in front of the portal, the time for his departure has finally come. The patriarch asked if he really didn't need guards. Eugene says he was confident he could at least protect himself and asked them not to worry about him. The patriarch knows this is true and that he is different from Iod. At this moment several expressions were possible to be seen. Among them there was happiness, sadness, and even remorse. Eugene seemed to be bothered by something. It was his father who couldn't stop crying. Now, right at the moment of his departure, the young man says he'll leave even if he keeps crying like this. So couldn't he give a smile at least before he leaves? The man, wiping his tears, gives a big smile wishing him good luck. Eugene thanks him. Turning to enter the portal, he affirms that he will return. Very beautiful scene with his father. Now we are in the capital of the magical kingdom of Arath, called Pentagon. The 5 magical towers create a pentagram around the palace, and that's why it has this name. At this moment, he was traveling in a floating carriage. Eugene affirms that he also came to this place in his past life, but things have changed a lot. They had the floating station that even among many magic realms, Arath was the only one to have its teleportation portal in the sky called the floating station, which is in the air because of various magics. And it shows how excellent Arath's magic is, also assisting with its commercial value. The guide asks if all this isn't incredible. He says that this kind of thing can be considered a cultural tour within this place. Pentagon has more than 15 different floating stations, and all were created by the wise Sienna. Eugene asks if this floating carriage was also created by Miss Sienna. The man says yes and also assures him not to worry, because even though it was created hundreds of years ago, they still do constant maintenance, so the accident rate is very low. Eugene just thinks that the rate then isn't 0. The man was going to continue talking about the tourist attractions, but Eugene interrupts him. He says that first of all he wants to visit Miss Sienna's mansion. The man is very happy, saying he made an excellent choice, and they quickly start flying towards the place. Halfway there he tells the story from 300 years ago, saying that after returning from the Demon King's castle, Miss Sienna became the youngest master of the tower after arriving in Arath. So in the Green Magic Tower Square there's a bronze statue built of her. The mansion was where Miss Sienna stayed until the end. About 200 years ago Miss Sienna left a letter saying she was retiring and left the mansion. Eugene says nobody knows where Sienna went after that, right? The man says that's true. The many Arath mages and Sienna's disciples tried to locate her, but no one was able to find out where she went. It's a pity since she disappeared on her birthday. The tour guide says he has a thought about it and thinks she might have gone to Devildom. Eugene asks why he thinks that. The man says that in that year, 200 years ago, it was when it had been 100 years since Miss left the fool Hamel's body and returned to Devildom. During her life Sienna always talked a lot about the great late friend. She wanted to avenge Hamel. That was the reason Miss Sienna went. Happy and blushing, the man asks if Eugene also knows. Hamel was deeply in love with Miss Sienna, and in the end before dying he confessed his love to her. Eugene starts to get very angry, asking who says such nonsense. The man was surprised by the reaction. Quickly Eugene tries to fix the mistake, but the man said it seems Eugene doesn't like much the romance between Hamel and Miss Sienna. But there are other theories about the great mage Sienna's retirement. There's a story that says Miss Sienna despised black magic and the demons opposed her and built the Black Magic Tower until the day she retired. Some people think that some radical black mages who were appealing for the construction of the Black Magic Tower murdered Miss Sienna. Eugene, again furious, says it's impossible for a mere black mage to assassinate the great Miss Sienna. The man says he thinks that way too and says that during that time, the Black Magic Tower also vehemently denied the assassination hypothesis. Eugene thinks she really couldn't have died by the hands of a black mage. But what if it was a demon king? Vermouth was still investing in Arath for the Black Magic Tower. From the perspective of the demon kings, Sienna must have been annoying enough to want to kill her. Arriving at the appointed place, Eugene sadly gets off the carriage, wondering, had Sienna really died? In front of the mansion, several people were clamoring to pass the test this time and enter the Magic Tower. All of these were students who were going to take the admission test for the Magic Towers. They would all like to enter, but as they don't have money they cannot enter. This is because the fees to enter the mansion are a few thousand money in the local currency, so the most they can do is stay here in the garden. Eugene asks why it's so expensive. The man says it's because there are still many people who pay all that just to get in. There's a superstition that if you pray to Miss Sienna's painting in the main hall of the mansion, that person will surely pass the admission test for the Magic Tower. At this moment, the guide handed the business card to the guard. The man, realizing it was the Lionhart family, panicked. They quickly started opening the door, apologizing for the inconvenience. After Eugene enters, the guide says he'll wait for him outside, thus closing the door. Finally, the moment arrived. The moment to see how Sienna lived all this time. Walking through the mansion's corridors, he realizes it's very large here and thinks she lived here for over 100 years. At this moment he has a memory of her asking him, what would he do after all this? This question was very sudden for him. She explains that, as they're wasting their youth in a place like this, Shouldn't they at least have a little fun when it's all over? But it seems poor Hamel never thought about that. The idiot Molin already said he wants to become a king, which makes Hamel call him crazy, asking why he would want to become a king. She just asks him not to pick on Molin since anyone can dream. Hamel asks if she's been drinking. He thinks this because this is a phrase he always said, saying anyone can dream. She furious says she was just trying to be honest, which leads him to ask what she wants to do. This also caught her off guard and she didn't really know how to respond. So completely flushed she says she wanted to have a normal life like everyone else, wanted to marry and have children. She wanted to become a grandma in the future. But was this what the future proposed to her? She wished to meet a good man, get married, and age peacefully. So why did she live alone for 100 years? Raising her hand while thinking of her companion, the guard next to him scolded him for touching it. Eugene gets frustrated as this was one of the first times he showed any emotion. So he moves to another location. He went to a huge study area that uses the entire mansion's basement. Rummaging through the bookshelf, he thinks Sienna must have left some clue here, but the guard scolds him again not to touch it. In this case, the only thing he can do is look at the covers and see if any title catches his attention. He starts to remember the necklace he found in the safe with implanted false memories, and wonders if all that was just by chance. Probably the necklace would have reacted to Hamel's soul just as the Spirit King managed to recognize him. Someone must be involved in his reincarnation. And if it was Sienna, she must have left some clue behind. So we return again to the painting at the mansion's entrance. He looked everywhere and found nothing. Eugene has no more ideas. At this moment, he started to think that maybe she didn't leave anything behind. Realizing the guard turned around and started to walk away, he calls out to his companion Sienna. Showing the middle finger, he says if she's bothered she should come and tell him personally. He probably expected some reaction, but nothing happened. So he turned and says she would tell him if she were alive, of course. Finally leaving the mansion, the guide says he must have enjoyed the tour, and that's because he left him waiting until after sunset. Eugene, realizing the inconvenience, tips the man for making him wait. His new destination is the Red Magic Tower. Now traveling with the floating carriage, Eugene says he has something to ask the guide. He asks if the man has ever heard of his brother named Eugene Lionhart. The man says that among the wizards in Pentagon, few people don't know this name. Eugene tells him not to worry, asking if it's been 4 years since his brother has been here in Arath, and asks if the man can share some rumors about him. Noticing the man was nervous and reluctant to speak, Eugene says he hasn't talked to his brother in a long time and would appreciate any information about him. So he won't be offended by whatever he says and also won't tell the family or Iode himself when he meets him. He says this swearing by his name. The guy just needs to say what he knows about his little brother. The man still hesitated to speak but says he will share what he knows. He heard that Mr. Iode often goes out at night to seek certain forms of entertainment. Eugene starts to think it must be some kind of entertainment he can have at his age. But the man interrupts him saying it's not that kind, and when Eugene asks what it is, the man says it's just a succubus. This completely infuriates Eugene, saying they're not in Vermouth, so why would there be a succubus here? The guide explains that even though they're not in Vermouth, there's still a black magic tower, and with it, there are several black mages and also demons. Eugene seemed very frustrated with the information. The guide says that in fact, he was being entertained by a succubus, and that this is a necessary evil in some places here in Arath. This street is famous for the black market, and some shops hire succubus as attendants. What he heard is that Iode often goes to this place. The guide also says the name of the street is Bolero, and the shops don't open every day. They only show all the corruption on the full moon night of each month. Initially, Eugene intended to keep his distance from Iode to concentrate on his studies, but knowing that the eldest son of the main family and Vermouth's descendant is playing with a succubus out there, makes him very angry. The guide says all this he told is a secret, and Eugene says he knows and tells the man not to worry. Since he swore by his name, he won't tell anything. Of course, all this could just be a rumor, and he has to control his urge to beat up his little brother. But now he has the information he needs. As much as he suffered a lot from his mother's pressure, this doesn't justify things, but we have to admit that the boy knows how to have fun.
Yeah, boy.
Sometime later, Eugene arrived at the magic tower. The mage in front of him was surprised to hear the name Lionhart, and immediately introduced herself as Hera, a mage from the Red Tower. Somewhat tense, she says that the master of the Red Tower is waiting for him upstairs, until suddenly one of the tower's windows explodes. Eugene asks if there was an accident. She explains that the Red Tower focuses mainly on summoning magic and that of all types of magic, this is the one with the highest probability of failure. At this moment it was possible to see two demons coming out of the Red Tower, but they were soon captured by two hands and completely obliterated. This was the master of the Red Tower known as Loberian. He seemed completely furious. He quickly started giving a big scolding to his pupils. This is because these beasts that were summoned could easily go after humans in the capital. The pupils started apologizing, saying they were sorry, but Loberian, completely furious, ordered them to pack their bags and get out of here because he was kicking them out. At this moment Loberian looked down and realized there was someone waiting for him there. Even though he was furious, he quickly descended down there. His expression quickly changed to tremendous happiness as he welcomed Eugene. The man says he almost didn't recognize him. Eugene mentions that Loberian, on the other hand, hasn't changed at all. That's because the wizard has been maintaining his youthfulness with magic. But now Eugene, after training his mana ability, can perceive that the man is different from 4 years ago. Loberian is extremely strong. Of course, he doesn't come close to the great mage Sienna, but he's definitely on the level of the masters of the 5 magic towers. Loberian says that the patriarch told him about Eugene's interest in magic, so he says that the path won't be easy, but he's sure the boy will do well. Until he notices a presence behind them. Someone was lurking at the door. Quickly, he used his magic, which caused the doors to open and reveal someone who was behind them. This was Eugene Lionhart. Eugene was furious to realize that all his life essence had been sucked by a succubus. Loberian asks why the boy doesn't come and greet his brother. All trembling, he says he doesn't know what to say. Eugene says hello to his brother, saying it's nice to see him again. Iode says yes, but it was clear he was in a panic. Loberian, furious, asks what he's waiting for. If there's nothing else to say, he should go up and read something. Iode says it's okay, and closes the door, doing what he was ordered to do. Loberian apologizes for showing unpleasant things, quickly changing the subject, saying that the patriarch said Eugene doesn't want to learn magic directly from the master of the tower. He says it's true, since if he learned directly from Loberian, many would hold grudges against the Lionharts. So for now, he wants to learn the art of magic by himself. Loberian understands his determination, and says if he has any doubts he can talk directly to Hera. He also says he can stay in the tower if he wishes while he's here in Arath. Eugene, seeing an opportunity, asks if he can go to the tower's library first. Now it's been a month since Eugene arrived at the magic tower. He went to the library every day to study. He read magical texts from morning until afternoon, and always slept very late at night. Eugene also trained other things besides magic and spent a few hours training mana before going to the library. He exercised his body every night until he was covered in sweat. Eugene was sleeping less, but his incredible body recovered from all the fatigue with just a few hours of sleep. At this point, he had already read all the beginner-level books in the library, and it was time to take a test. It seems that 300 years ago, Sienna had divided the stages of magic into 5 distinct levels. This was a particular style of hers that many of the mages of Arath began to follow over time. Circles. It was a circular ring of mana spinning to create magic. When mana grows beyond the limits of a single circle, another one forms. 300 years later, most mages learned magic using circles, and those who didn't are known as mages with different foundations, such as elemental magic or black magic. Eugene came here today to try to use circles. Hera says there are other methods, but over the past 300 years, it has been proven that circles are the most efficient style. Eugene says he would like to add his own touch to them, but Hera says that modifying the basic circles is not recommended and asks if he can explain better. Eugene says he intends to use the Lionhart's mana method. Hera is a little suspicious of the boy, saying that mana is used very differently in magic and martial arts, and unless he forms the magic and activates it correctly, no magical effect will occur. Even if the mana gets out of control, he may not only be severely injured but even killed. But that's why he wants to test it. That's why he read all the books in the tower. She thinks he really has the mentality of a 17-year-old to have that, and says it's okay, he can test it. Pulling out her staff, she says if she judges that things are getting dangerous, she will intervene. That's because if he gets hurt, it will be both the tower master's and her own fault. So emanating his mana, he says he'll start. Hera stood in front of him, ready for the unexpected. For Eugene, the ritual of white flames and circles are different methods, but essentially the same. With the ritual of white flames, mana is passed through the heart stars. With circles, mana is passed through a hook, so by replacing the circles with his stars, he can increase his mana and control it depending on what the situation requires. Hera begins to be perplexed. He's perfectly controlling a large amount of mana. How is that possible at his age? Eugene initially conjured a fireball, made it larger, then reduced it, and turned it into a magic missile. He just did the magical calculations in his head without even showing them and changed the magic without dispelling. Eugene is pleased with the result for his first attempt, then asks if she can summon a monster for him to test the strength of his magic. Somewhat reluctant, she says yes and thinks if a golem would be enough. Quickly she starts casting a spell and a golem starts to emerge from the ground. This is a golem made of cabrium. This monster doesn't know how to defend itself, but the outer part is resistant enough to count as its own defense mechanism. Eugene is happy with her conjuring and points his finger at the golem, making a giant shot. The shot hit the golem's chest head on. Sometime later Loberian himself came to the scene because he couldn't believe what he heard. Eugene used the ritual of white flames to create a magic circle. Besides all that, there were no failures in the purity or density of mana, and regardless of the type of magic, his offensive strength is above that of a third circle mage. Loberian thinks this is monstrous talent. Using the method of magic circles and martial arts not only impresses him, but also scares him. Eugene's white flames are now on 3 stars and probably the circles must be at this level too. Sometime later Loberian was talking alone with his pupil, asking if Eugene had left, and she says yes, because he had some plans this morning. So very thoughtfully he says he has something to ask Hera. He asks if it would be absurd to write a letter of recommendation from Acreon for Eugene. She's surprised by this since the only ones who can enter are high-level mages and great aristocrats besides royalty. Loberian says Eugene is qualified enough for that. He mastered the introductory magic text in a month, also used the magic circles with his star to use magic, easily made a hole in the resistant cabrium golem. So he'll definitely write that letter of recommendation now. For someone as talented as Eugene, he should be treated as such. Hera says other mages may complain, so Loberian asserts that if people complain, it only means they lost to their envy and failed to see the truth. But changing the subject, he asks what kind of plans the boy had for today since he doesn't know anyone in Arath. Hera says the boy said he was going to see a friend. Loberian is surprised since Eugene wasn't supposed to have any friends in Arath. At this moment we were at Merdane Square. Eugene came here to see the great statue of Sienna. It seems she always smiled like that when she did something good with her magic, until suddenly someone very tall appears in front of him, asking if he was Eugene. Eugene froze in panic and surprised to realize that it was Eugene Lionhart. The doubt that wouldn't go away was if it was really possible to have a beard like that at 18 years old. Eugene says he has grown a lot, but not as much as himself, and Eugene knows that very well. Just by shaking the boy's hand, Eugene can feel that he has trained his body a lot in the last 4 years. But even so, he says it's not enough. Then he takes out a vial saying that this is his family's secret muscle growth supplement. But of course Eugene doesn't want this. Eugene even tells him to stop trying to send that strange potion to him through his father. And he gets straight to the point, asking why he would like to see him. Eugene asks if he knows about Bolero Alley. Eugene says more or less, but he knows that's where Iode is going all the time. The bodybuilder says he heard a rumor that a giant's testicle is being auctioned there. Eugene is astonished to hear this and asks if he heard correctly. Eugene repeats, saying it's the testicle of a giant.
Good.
It must be huge. This is an item that has a lot of value for mages, and he wants to make an original muscle growth supplement by giving this testicle to a famous alchemist from Arath. Initially he asks them to go together, saying he brought plenty of money but it might not be enough. To sum up, Eugene understands that he wants to borrow money now. Out of nowhere the man widens his eyes and falls to his knees, begging for him to help. Eugene, very embarrassed, says it's okay and asks him to get up. Eugene thanks him and swears by his own name that he will pay with interest. He also says there will be other high-value items at the auction besides the giant's testicles, and asks if Eugene isn't interested. But he's only interested in the street called Bolero. That's because he crossed paths with Iode a few days ago in the tower. It was clear he had signs of being sucked by a succubus recently. For sure on the next full moon Iode will go to Bolero Alley again. The man can't stand being unsucked anymore. At this moment, Eugene was heading to meet Loberian. He wanted to ask this man a few questions about his brother. Upon arrival, Loberian greeted him and asked him to sit. Now face to face with the master of the magic tower, Eugene questioned why he was called here. Loberian raised a finger, pulling a piece of paper from a stack behind him, asking the boy to check this document. It was a recommendation letter from Acreon, which left Eugene completely shocked. This was because Acreon's royal library has been famous for over 300 years for storing the highest level collection of magical knowledge in Arath. At this moment, the boy tried to appear humble and said that this was too much for him. But the tower master affirmed that this was the perfect moment for Eugene to go to Acreon. This was because Eugene still lacks knowledge. He is merely a raw talent waiting to learn magic, and then will learn the best magic possible. Loberian says that this knowledge could one day give him tremendous power. In Acreon, the knowledge from the era of legends and the writings of the best scholars of that time are also stored. This makes the boy ask if Sienna's writings are there. The answer to that is yes. In the last years of her life, Sienna wrote down the essence of her magic in volume 3 known as Witchcraft. This manuscript is in Acreon and is considered one of the best books of magic in the history of all Arath. At first, he will only have access to the commercial area, but even then, he will gain enough magical knowledge not to need any other manuscript. Loberian tells how after reading Witchcraft for the first time, all the magic he had learned until then seemed like child's play. Of course, he is not sure if this recommendation letter can become an entry pass to Acreon, so he asks Eugene if it's okay for him to personally write the recommendation letter. The boy says yes and asks if this won't cause unnecessary trouble for him, but he just laughs, saying that he won't be affected by something like that. Eugene, on the other hand, hopes that Loberian won't be offended by the next thing he's going to say and end up withdrawing his recommendation letter. So he calls for the man and says he has something to say about his brother Eugene Lionhart. Eugene recounts that as soon as he arrived in town, he gathered information about his dear brother and found out that he was having fun with succubus in the streets instead of training magic. Loberian seemed both frightened and sad at the same time, meaning he probably knew what Eugene's brother was doing. The man initially seems somewhat taken aback and says he doesn't know how to address this. The first thing he does is confirm and say that he's seen it a few times, but couldn't do anything to stop him. In the past, many people died having their life force sucked by a succubus, but when Helmuth really opened the borders, the demons completely changed their attitude. The same goes for succubus who still suck people's life force. However, they no longer kill anyone, and that's because the Queen of Nightmares herself strongly forbade it here. But of course, all this doesn't justify Iode's actions. The Tower Master asks Eugene to try to consider his position, which leaves the boy somewhat surprised. Loberian explains that Iode came to Arath at the age of 4 with great expectations, but the talent he had couldn't meet those expectations. He went through various difficulties, and they tried their best to continue guiding him. Unfortunately, Iode cannot shake off the expectations of carrying the Lionhart family name, and the pressure on him continues to grow day by day. So the Tower Master kind of knew about all this and warned him not to get too involved. Loberian allowed him to enter this life because if he hadn't gotten rid of the stress before, he would have lost control long ago. Unfortunately, our protagonist knows very well how things work in the main family. The two crazy mothers constantly vying for power, two prodigy children with many ambitions. Surely Iode felt very pressured being alone among them. The reason he continues here in the Magic Tower being mocked is because even that is better than going back to the main family. Of course, Eugene understands the situation but says that a succubus is already going too far. They may be smiling now, but they are still demons and have never truly been able to integrate with humans. So Eugene will have to see with his own eyes what the succubus is doing to his brother. Now we're on a full moon night on Bolero Street. These two people are who we think they are. The taller blonde man is the crazy bodybuilder, while the black-haired guy is Eugene trying not to attract attention with the white hair of his Lionhart family. At this moment someone called Eugene. As soon as he answered, he asked how the man knew. The person calling him was the guide saying that the communicator only connects on Bolero Street, and says he'll inform as soon as he finds Iode. Initially, our protagonist thought it would be impossible to find his brother, but the guide says Iode always comes without any disguise wearing the same clothes, so it will be easy to find him. This leaves Eugene even more furious thinking about beating up his brother. Now finally it's time to go to the auction house. There are many auction houses on Bolero Street, and they all have the same rules where bids are confidential. All people are taken to different rooms and bidders cannot be identified. Now inside the auction room, the red button means to ask for help, the blue button means to place a bid, and the yellow one to increase your bid. Eugene came along with Garges to the auction. Since there wasn't much for him to do at the moment, he decided to take a look at the things around here. With that, the magic made curtains open, a man introduces himself thanking everyone for being here on this full moon night. The purpose of this auction house is to offer the highest rarity magical equipment, and their specialty today is helmless items. The first item of the night is the Horn of Valorex, with an initial bid of 10 million coins. Then it was the turn of the Prosia fruit, the Mandrake root, and the Yuzurak rose buttons. But none of this sparked Eugene's interest. Gargus also only came here to obtain the giant's testicle. The next item to be announced was a metal object made of an unknown material that hadn't sold for a long time. It seems that the auctiongoers didn't see value in this item. This was an object found in the Khazard Hills within Helmut's territory. The only thing the item does is emit a glow when placed under the moonlight. The initial bid for this item is 1 million coins. Immediately when the man opened the box, Eugene widened his eyes and pressed the button as fast as he could. Gargus found Eugene's interest and haste for the item strange. The auctioneer was also impressed since they had never had an offer for this item before. Eugene remained completely amazed, thinking he never imagined finding this in a place like this. A weapon never written in history before, the destruction that took the form of a sword. The object inside the box was a fragment of the moonlight blade that Vermouth had used before. Some time later the auctioneer came to deliver the item. His companion didn't understand and questioned why he bought such a useless item, but there was no doubt that this was a fragment of the moonlight blade. Vermouth found this blade in one of the Khazard caves in his past life and ended up returning it when he left Helmuth. The moonlight blade is very dangerous to the point of bringing destruction every time it was unsheathed, besides refusing everyone as its bearer, except Vermouth. Perhaps the legendary hero broke it into pieces so it wouldn't be used again. The intention was to buy the item to check if there was any trace of mana, which wasn't the case. It no longer gave off the same evil sensation as before and was silent now. But what would be done with this item should be thought about later with more calm. At this moment the guide called Eugene, saying that Iode had arrived. Eugene began to leave the auction to go meet his brother, but says he will leave his cards so that Gargus can borrow the money and buy the giant's testicles. Now, following the guide's instructions, he arrived at a store called Rafflesia. Soon the security guards asked if he was a customer. Seeing demons here was new to Eugene. If it were in his past life, he would have killed both without hesitation. So he replied that he would like to take a look. The guard says that the entry fee is 2 million coins, plus the additional fee that will depend on the duration and type of dream he will have. The boy didn't hesitate and gave the requested money. Passing by the guards was something done very easily. Now inside, people were having fun everywhere. While Eugene looked for his brother, a waitress came to greet him, and we have to admit she's a beautiful waitress.
Yeah, boy.
Eugene asks the woman where the dreams are. The girl in a provocative tone asks if he's in a hurry, calling him cute. She also asked if this was his first time here and answered that the dreams were in the hall downstairs. But while filling his cup, she said he should drink a little to loosen up more. Eugene rudely refused, saying he didn't want to drink and would go downstairs immediately. She deduced that the boy was embarrassed and said he would loosen up completely when he got to the room. Eugene was following the woman down the hallway. The succubus tries to explain that she will take some of his essence, which will make him a little tired when he wakes up. But Eugene's intention was simply to check the hallways, and now he was ready. So handing a note of money to the succubus, he says he's going home to sleep and is only paying for the drink. She accepted the money without complaining since it was an absurd amount for just drinks. After that, he was guided to the nearest restaurant within this inn. Arriving there, the attendant asked if he had a good dream, but Eugene didn't answer the man and just asked him to bring the best food they had. Now he was really eating and waiting until finally the person he had been waiting for arrived. He was coming while being dragged by 2 guards. His brother Iode at this moment was completely debilitated. We can say he was just the cover of Batman. The real Batman stayed at home. I don't know why, but at this moment it seems that the author changed some names in the work. Iode is now being called Uid, so I will call him that from now on. Eugene was furious to see his older brother's situation. The man was not only having fun with a succubus but also relying on demons. Eugene quickly got up from the table and went after them. He pursued them for a long time, but the path they were taking didn't make sense. So he kept following for a while longer until they finally arrived in front of a house where they were going to enter. Eugene came out of his hiding place to go after them, but was soon intercepted by other men. It was clear that their intention was to block the boy's path. The man who seemed to be their leader told Eugene to get lost from here, because this is not a store. This made our protagonist ask what this place was for then. Instead of answering, The man grabbed him by the neck, now asking if the boy thought he was joking. Eugene mocked, saying it seemed like he was, and landed a super punch on the old man's chin. The man flew several meters and it was already possible to see that he was toothless, then falling to the ground causing a thunderous noise. The other henchmen quickly drew their weapons. Their goal was to eliminate the boy, but he defeated the two with great ease. Not only did he defeat them, but he was now stepping on the blonde's head, asking again what this place was. But to his surprise, they were all unconscious now, so he would have to check it out for himself. Eugene immediately kicked open the front door, knocking it down with no difficulty. Inside, a very strong smoke was everywhere, and Eugene deduced that it was narcotics. Suddenly a beastly man pointed at the boy asking who he was, even saying that it didn't make sense since there should be guards outside. Eugene was quick to applaud, saying it's unusual to see a beastly man, a human, and a demon together using drugs. We have to admit that our protagonist's humor is very good. The men quickly started running towards him, but he simply cast 3 magic shots and knocked them all out very easily. He then asked where Yuid was, but as the man didn't intend to speak, Eugene started drawing his sword, saying he would find him alone. Unsheathing his sword whineth and pointing it to the sky, a strong vortex was created. The wind seemed to have traveled throughout the area. It was as if it was everywhere. Eugene at this moment had searched the rooms on the first and second floors with his elemental magic. The only one he hadn't checked yet was the 3rd floor. Pointing his finger at the ceiling, he fired in that direction, then passed through the hole he had just made, landing very delicately on the floor. He realized that this floor had only one room, and that's where Yuid was. On the door in front of him, dark magic was being conjured. Eugene quickly drew the fragment of the moonlight blade from his pocket. At the same time, the magic came at him with full force. Somehow the fragment defended him against the spell, and moreover, the object seemed to have suffered no damage. This made him happy, saying it still works very well. It was at this moment that someone was standing behind where the door had been. The man was incredulous, saying that magic should have killed him, but something defended the attack. His father and patriarch of the Lionhart family had warned him about this. He warned not to get involved with dark magic, and yet his eldest son did. In fact, the patriarch of the family must have listed about 10 things for you not to do, and I believe he did the 11 unlisted ones. At this point, Eugene says he won't follow him if he runs away now. Then, furiously, he orders him to get out of his way immediately. To show he wasn't bluffing, he releases his aura of white flames, strong enough to intimidate his opponent. The man, seeing the power of the Lionharts, was incredulous. At this moment, 2 demons came out of the door behind the wizard. These were the demons who brought Yuid here. This left our protagonist completely excited. The monsters quickly drew their claws. Eugene entered a battle stance, calling the monsters to come at him. They came running straight for him. Eugene cut with his sword whineth, causing a small whirlwind, defeating one of the demons everywhere easily. The surviving demon continued its charge. It tried to strike with its right hand, but its right hand no longer belonged to its body. Eugene cut with absurd ease, then quickly turning and putting aura into his hand, he strikes the demon's head, pushing it against the wall. Now there was only one person alive in this room besides him. Soon the modification magic began to unravel. The man finally realized that standing in front of him now was Eugene Lionhart from the main family. But now it was too late for any kind of discussion. The panicked man began pleading to let him explain, but realizing the boy wouldn't stop, he tried to attack him again using dark magic. A sinister spell shot from the tip of his staff. Eugene seemed not to care much about it. He simply cut and sent the spell flying away, then ran towards the man. In his final moments, the wizard thought it was impossible for someone to block his magic so easily. Eugene stopped with his blade at the man's neck, ordering him to stay still and not try any tricks or he'd be decapitated. Eugene left the trembling wizard behind as he advanced towards Yuid. His brother was lying unconscious on a bed in the middle of the room. There was something strange pulsating inside a chalice right in front of the bed. Eugene didn't seem to know what it was until the wizard said that was the heart of a unicorn. These were beings that had an absurdly strong mana and divine power. It had immeasurable value to be used as a sacrifice. Eugene asked if he was trying to form a contract with the Demon King. The wizard says he would never dare to initiate a contract with one of the Demon Kings. He was trying to make a contract with Baron Ulfar of Helmuth. This was a subordinate incubus of Duchess Nwar. Eugene knows this woman well, saying she really lived for 300 years. Surely she wouldn't be a match for a Demon King, but considering she was the Night Witch Queen, She must be strong enough to be called Duchess. Eugene questions if his brother wanted to form a contract with a mere incubus of the Duchess. Is he sacrificing a unicorn's heart while being drunk and drugged beyond belief? Did he get that right? The man prostrating completely says that was what you had desired. The boy provided the money so he couldn't reject his order. Eugene, still furious, says he must have loved that the eldest son of the Lionheart gave him money and requested he initiate a contract with his master. He is sure that if all this had succeeded, who would benefit from it would be the wizard who would gain power from Ophir. So judging that the man's fault is due to his greed, he orders him to stop blaming others and tells him to shut up if he doesn't want to die. The nervous, sweating man immediately accepted his order. At this moment, Eugene goes to his dear brother, who is completely debilitated and unconscious, and lands a very strong slap on his face. Ketchup came out of his mouth and his face was deformed by the impact. Startled, he wakes up asking if it was Eugene in front of him. It seems that after this affection, his brother finally regained consciousness. There's nothing like brotherly love to put sense into a guy's head. Startled, Ewan asks why he's here. Of course, because he followed his brother. Eugene says he heard he was in trouble and then did his best to come here and understand the situation. He even tried to understand that his little brother wanted to rest a bit. But holding Yuad's head, he says the boy shouldn't dirty his hands with dark magic. As one of the direct descendants of the Lionheart family, as the direct heir, he dared to try to make a contract with an incubus. Yuad says he couldn't control it, but Eugene headbutts him with all his might. He was furious, asking how he couldn't control it, insulting him in various ways. Eugene explains that getting involved with demons in a contract means he owns the person's soul. He would have to obey even if the demon told him to kill or die. If Yuad turned into a dark wizard, he would disgrace the entire family. And if the demon asked him to kill his parents and siblings, and even steal all the Lionheart treasures? Yuad says people told him he didn't have to follow every order and even promised he wouldn't follow anything against his ethics. This only made our protagonist even more irritated, as he knows very well that for demons, promises mean nothing. This thing about not needing to follow every order wasn't a complete lie, but for that, you had to risk your life and disobey the demon's orders. But would Yuad, who had already surrendered to a mere succubus and was trying to escape reality with drinks, do that? For a moment, the boy remained silent. While Eugene looked at him seriously, the boy gathered the courage to speak, asking what he knows about him to insult him like this. Mocking the situation, he asks his brother to tell him then. The boy starts talking about how Eugene has no idea, as he receives all the attention. Being an adopted son of the direct family, he got all the support from the patriarchs, so he doesn't know anything. Eugene understood he meant he was being unjustly treated, but explains that the boy also had the same support as him. Not only did he also inherit the white flames, but also had a chance to become a disciple of the Magic Tower Master. Hearing this makes him cry even more. The reason Eugene is better isn't simply because the patriarch treats him better. That's simply because he was born better. Yuad says talent isn't something he can get, while Eugene explains not everything comes from talent. He only got where he is because of his hard training. His brothers are also doing their best in the main house now, while Yuad was here addicted to things he shouldn't be. With a look of disgust, Eugene asks if he thinks he can become the patriarch just by gaining strength with dark magic. The boy says he doesn't want to become the patriarch. He was shouting that he wanted to become a dark wizard and go to Vermouth to be recognized by his. At this moment, Eugene landed a punch right in the middle of his brother's face. The punch was so strong he flew and crashed against the wall. He was screaming in pain. Eugene asks what he said. A Lionheart descendant of the great hero Vermouth would like to be recognized by demons. He aspires for demons to recognize him over his own family. Eugene furiously says he's getting things wrong. Besides being the eldest Lionheart, he's worthless. With such words, Yuad could only stay quiet and listen. He had everything others couldn't have, and yet he was still here crying. Taking his phone, Eugene says he doesn't want to talk to him anymore, and he'll have to speak directly with Liberian from now on. Sometime later, the guards were taking the wizard away. At this moment, the Tower Master was already in this room. While he was furious, the man was also disappointed. Yuad starts stammering, calling for Liberian, saying he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't really get involved with dark magic. But Liberian says he tried and that's enough. Yuad shamed the Lionheart name. He insulted his own father who trusted the boy to be under his care. He insulted the mages of the Red Tower of Magic who taught him. He insulted Liberian who tried to accommodate him. Yuad starts making excuses again. Liberian orders him to stop or he'll be forced to punish him for such insults. just like his body is ordering him to do now. If he really wants to apologize, it will have to be with his parents who sent him here. The boy fell into despair, not knowing what to do, so everyone returned to the tower. After that night, Loberian called Gillard and Theonis to Arath. Both were completely dissatisfied, but the tower master had also called another person who had just arrived. This was Balzac Ludbeth, the master of the Black Magic Tower. This man held the position of master of the Black Magic Tower for decades and is one of the 3 legendary black mages who made a contract with the Demon King of Incarceration. He was extremely powerful. The woman immediately asked what he was doing sitting here. She was asking this to the master of the Black Magic Tower. Loberian asked them to calm down since the Black Magic Tower had nothing to do with it. Furious, Theonis complains that Loberian said Uid was trying to practice black magic, and now he's saying the Black Tower has nothing to do with it. The man said the Black Tower doesn't control all practitioners of black magic in Arath. The wizard leading this cult is called Gavid, but he's not affiliated with the Black Tower. He's from the Mage Guild. The woman was going to continue throwing a tantrum until the patriarch interrupted, asking why the master of the Black Tower was here if the Black Tower isn't involved. He said it's just to take some kind of responsibility for what happened. Centuries ago, learning black magic was enough to be treated as a criminal and be executed. But after Vermouth made a deal with the Demon King of Incarceration, people were allowed to learn black magic if they wanted. Nowadays things are different, and learning black magic and making contracts are no longer considered crimes. So he just wanted to respect the wishes of the Lionhart family. The patriarch said it seems like the man is humiliating himself. He's doing this even though he doesn't need to, and only for the sake of the Lionhart family's dignity. Indeed, he is correct. He's doing this to avoid becoming an enemy of the Lionhart family because of this incident. Drug crimes will be judged by Aratha's laws. As for the succubus, they received sanctions. Theonis asks what kind of responsibility he's trying to take on. The man said he will cut off the head of Baron Hohenolfer, who made a contract with Gavid and tried to finalize the contract with Mr. Uid. The candles went out in the room. The master of the Black Tower with his finger was conjuring a flame, in which he said the Demon King of Incarceration had something to say to everyone. Hearing this name, Eugene became furious. The man continued with his ritual, saying the Demon King of Incarceration is deeply displeased that Vermouth's family, whom he holds in such high esteem, is involved in this mess. That's why he decided to cut off Hohenolfer's head. Eugene could barely control his anger. Hearing that the Demon King of Incarceration held Vermouth's family in high esteem made him very furious. The patriarch seemed to be in the same state, until the man snapped his fingers. Bowing, he said he wants to apologize again, and says that this probably won't lessen Gilead's anger, but he wants to let the patriarch know that the Black Tower and the Demon King of Incarceration are trying their best to reduce the discomfort of the Lionhart family. The patriarch chose to remain silent. Bowing again, the master of the Black Tower says he looks forward to meeting again in a more friendly atmosphere. I don't know why, but he looked at Eugene, giving him a beautiful smile. Eugene, on the other hand, didn't seem to like that very much, so finally the man left the room. The patriarch was completely nervous and asked Eugene to please excuse them, and so he did. When the young man was no longer in the room, Gilad apologized to the tower master, saying this is his fault due to his negligence. But Loberian explains that this is his fault for being too hard on Uid. At this moment, the patriarch affirms that he will take Uid back to the main family residence. This caught his wife by surprise. Desperate, she says they really don't need to do this. It's not like he has completely fallen into the world of black magic. She starts making excuses, saying he won't do it again, and is sure he'll see this incident as a lesson. But the patriarch says that in the 300-year history of the Lionhart family, the main family has never produced any wizards. He will not change his decision even if Uid is his son. What he did certainly tarnished the family name, and he can no longer allow him to remain in Arath. The woman becomes furious, saying there is no place for him in the main family residence, trying to explain that the other 2 sons were acknowledged by the main family members while Uid was in Arath. Realizing the patriarch didn't care, she begins to say that her husband never did anything for Uid. All he did was for his other wife Anasilla and for his new adopted son who isn't even his blood. The patriarch looked disdainfully and asked if that's really what she thought. He explains that he gave the children everything they ever wanted and sent Uid to Arath because he wanted to learn magic. The furious woman says that if he really cares about Uid, he should have done everything possible for him to be a pupil of Mr. Loberian. If he really cared about his son, he would have sent someone to monitor and watch over him. Gilad just asks her to stop humiliating the Lionhart family and himself. This leaves her even more frustrated, saying that if Uid returns to the main residence, she will be the one humiliated. Then she says that if the patriarch insists on taking Yud back, she will take him to her parents' house. She prefers him to learn magic at home with his parents, then let the boy return to the main residence. The patriarch says if that's what she wants. If that's what Yud wants too, then do as they see fit. Eugene was walking through the corridors when someone called out to him. It was Balzac asking if they could talk for a moment. The man says they couldn't talk properly because of this unpleasant situation. Eugene says he doesn't want to talk properly with the master of the Black Magic Tower. The man realizes the boy doesn't seem to like him very much. Eugene confirms not only him but all black mages. Balzac says it's been 300 years and he hasn't done anything wrong. Eugene may hate black magic, but he pleads with him not to hate him. But it's not like the boy is going to like him out of the blue. So he changes the subject, saying he heard a lot about Eugene and his performance in the bloodline succession ritual, and that the boy did very well with magic and even received a recommendation letter for Acreon. Looking to the side, he says he couldn't say that inside and affirms that with his responsibilities he also has one that benefits Eugene. Of course, this makes the boy ask what he's talking about. He says it's hard to get into Acreon just with a recommendation from the Red Tower, since the masters of the other towers and other mages will reject him, saying he's not qualified. So as the master of the Black Magic Tower, he will write a recommendation for Eugene himself. The boy just asks why he would do such a thing. The man reveals to be interested in his talents besides not having a good relationship with the master of the Red Magic Tower. Even though he never did anything bad to him, he must hate him simply for being a black mage. Then he says that if supporting his recommendation as a fellow master of the Magic Tower, Loberian should hate him less, and also make a good impression on the Lionhart family. Eugene says that if he is indeed going to write this recommendation letter, then he will accept, but that doesn't mean they'll become buddies. Smiling, the man says that if the boy doesn't hate him even more than he already does, that's enough for him. Then he apologizes for bothering him, and says that was all he wanted for today, until Eugene asks if he really wasn't involved in his brother's problems. The man pauses, saying he takes great pride in being a black mage, and untalented black mages embarrass black magic just by existing, so even if that's Lionheart's successor, he wouldn't give an opportunity to anyone who wasn't extremely talented. Walking away, he asks if Eugene is satisfied with the answer. The boy thinks of his brother's deplorable state, and walks away cursing and wishing to punch him in the face again. Sometime later, Eugene was sitting in front of something surprising. It was the unicorn's heart. His father gave it to him as a reward for stopping his brother's shameful behavior. Of course, there are various ways to use a unicorn's heart, but draining the mana from the heart is the easiest and most convenient thing to do. Asserting that the heart is in good condition, that the unicorn hasn't eaten too many French fries in recent years, he begins to drain the mana from the heart. At this rate, he would reach the 4-star level even before turning 20. The Lionheart family would faint if they knew this, because in the last 300 years of history, no one has reached 4 stars before becoming an adult. The Patriarch and Guillaume have 6 stars, and that alone classifies them as one of the strongest few in this nation. If he learns all this, he can give his utmost to reach the 5-star level. He will give everything in Hamel's method of white flames created by Vermouth, overcoming everything and everyone. The next day, the bodybuilder was saying that the giant's testicles cost 30 million. This drove Eugene completely crazy. The man was in a hurry because if they didn't deliver the money by midnight, they would sell the item to the next bidder. Now they were at the Pentagon Bank. The receptionist, upon seeing a black card, was open-mouthed, and he immediately asked if he would like to create a private account at the bank, but of course Eugene refused. Sometime later, they were already outside. Gargis was saying that the testicles would be sent wherever he was staying, and this was Eugene's chance to see the testicles with his own eyes. The boy was furious with the bodybuilder trying to take him to see a giant's balls. Despite this, he says to forget it, and agrees to go. Gargis says he knew he would be interested and warns that he can give a bit of their essence if he wants, but Eugene says he won't eat anyone's balls. Eugene is not interested in the testicles but in the method of red flames that Gargis learned. As he walked, he thought he wanted to see with his own eyes how different the method of white flames is from others, when something caught his attention in the crowd. He was scared by what he saw, quickly jumped from where he was and ran as fast as he could, thinking, could it be possible? There was no way this was happening. He ran as fast as he could while pushing through the crowd. As he ran, he thought there was no way he could be mistaken. That light purple hair, it was the color caused by the concentration of absurd mana in a person's body. There was a woman in front of him with purple hair. Eugene calls out to the girl. Could she be his great love, Sienna?
No.
We'll find out in the next video.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Leave a like if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. See you in the next video. Bye for now.